I had just bought, it was an old metal recycling plant in the same town. It was a 13,000 square foot building, 5.5 acres, and got it for like the price of a house. And I was just driving around, saw that one. It had tall grass, metal missing, holes in the roof. It had obviously been neglected for a few years. I was meeting with the city that day and they mentioned that building. I was like, hey, do you have a guy's number? Call him. And he was like, we want 2.2 million at first. He's like, yeah, like we just had to buy this with the tanks. And so originally I came in, told my partner on the building, I was like, I'm going to offer 600. He was like, no way. I was like, yeah. Well, I think a lot of people reverse anchor themselves. Like you probably have seen this as well, where like a guy's like, man, they want 2.2. I'm going to offer him 1.6, see if I can get a deal. I was like, I'm going to hit him around 600. And actually, when I called him, I was like, 700 sounds just a little bit more sharp. Week and a half, 2 weeks later, he calls me. He's like, what about 1.25? And I was like, I'm in the game now. He comes back and then he was like, I think I went to 800. He came back, like, let me have a meeting. He had a meeting with the board, came back 825, and then locked it up.
You're flipping up to half a dozen houses a month, managing 22 deals at a time. And you say that's because of a simple system? What's that?
So right now,
all right, today's guest is quietly dominating distressed commercial real estate and doing it without making much noise. Jake Freeman has acquired 250,000 square foot of industrial real estate in 12 short months. He still flips between about half a dozen houses a month in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and operates with a system so dialed in that he claims he's never lost money. We're going to find out. From mobile home parks to Class B industrial properties, Jake's strategy is simple. Cold call hard, negotiate better, and give generously, with a major chunk of his profits going to charity. In this episode, we're going to talk about distressed industrial deals, scaling through systems, and the mindset to build that portfolio without cutting corners. Let's dive in. Welcome, Jake.
Thanks, Logan. Glad to be here.
No doubt. No doubt. I'll tell you what. Give me about 5 minutes of who's Mr. Freeman? Where are you from? How'd you wind up here today?
I grew up, short story, west of Tulsa. My family's from Manford, Oklahoma. And then real estate kind of came by accident. So I was similar to you. I think you were doing oil field, right, at one point?
Yeah.
So I was doing oil field for, So I went to a little small private college my freshman year, got kicked out, went to OSU for a semester.
Why'd you get kicked out?
Oh, long story. And then went to OSU for a semester and then just was not doing well at school. I really wanted to do business. So ended up moving to Colorado actually and trained horses when I was like 21, 22 for a guy I knew that had a ranch up there. And because I was just essentially lost in any kind of direction. When I came back, I tried to do one more semester at Oklahoma State and then started just running all kinds of like trucks and equipment and all this, just trying to make any kind of money. We were running hot shot, didn't even know we didn't have insurance. Like I wasn't paying attention to anything, just young and trying to make a dollar.
Yeah.
Well, then the guy that I met in Colorado called me up. He was starting up a submersible pump company with a private equity group. And then I started doing oil field. And so I did that for about 4.5 years. And during it, I was like, man, I really wanted to start a business. Like that was something I really wanted to do. So I started a trash company that was like residential roll off. And then I had 2 of those companies that I've sold.
Did that service oil field at all?
No, that was not oil field. So I actually was I hired a guy pretty early on to run it. And then I was still traveling for oil field and then had trash company running with all the trucks. It was mostly just in Tulsa, not like over the road. It was mostly roll offs and residential. So got pretty lucky with selling both of those. The timing was right.
Really?
Yeah. And then that was actually when I started doing real estate was we would start dropping off like roll off containers and all that. Someone fill them up with furniture. And so from filling up with furniture, I was like, man, I wonder if these guys are selling their houses. Oh. And so then I was like, let's start calling whoever booked the dumpsters.
But you got a business that's working and you kind of like it. Why are you kind of like, why are you looking around? What's going on?
I think just curious mind. Okay. And that's something that I think in my 20s, I bounced quite a bit. And then now it's a lot more focused. But what happened was we had dropped a dumpster off. I called the guy and I was like, hey, do you want to sell this house? He's like, yeah, I've actually got this house and a house across the street. And it was like $35,000. The other one was $7,000. And I actually just told a buddy because I was like, hey, I don't think I can take on 2 at once. I don't know what I'm doing. And so the $35,000 was a lot better shape. The $7,000 was obviously rough, like hole in the roof, all that. And so I didn't even think about like wholesaling it or, trying to make any kind of profit. I just called a buddy. He was like, hey, you want this one? He went in, he bought it for $7,000. And then, that was the first deal I ever did. It was in a pretty rough area. Like there's one street in Tulsa, it's Pine Street, and you pretty much don't go north of it. And I was like touching Pine Street, and I was like, maybe I'll be okay
at the edge.
Yeah. So hired a contractor that I kind of barely knew, renovated the property, and then when I went to do a refi on it, shortly after, like right when it was done. And I remember I made like 52 or 53,000. But at the time I was like 24, 25. I was like 26. And oil field was like right at 100 grand salary, 110, like right around there. I was like, man, I'm pretty comfortable. Like it's Tulsa, low cost of living. That. And then I did that one and I was like, well, I've never been able to actually put cash back. Like I've been able to save a little bit.
So you refied and pulled some equity out.
Yeah. And then still have the home. Actually sold it on an owner finance note to a guy that really wanted a home over there. And it worked out really good. But so did that one. I was like, man. And I didn't really think about it. And I went like another like 11 or 12 months. And then some of that cash, I put it all back into more containers for the trash business, which then the margin was a lot lower on the trash business. And looking back, I was like, why did I do that? I should just doubled down and done more houses. But at the time, I was so focused on building the business to sell it that I thought, okay, I'll take this money. I'll go put it here.
That's not a bad answer either, though. A lot of folks see big chunks in real estate and like those licks.
Yeah.
But I've seen more people build an operating business and build significant cash flow with less capital than do it in real estate, as you probably have noticed now.
Oh, yeah.
So that sword cuts two ways.
Yeah, I think, it's like, I think you've talked about this and I've heard some of it, but, leverage is kind of up to each person, like how much you want to leverage, but it turns around quick if you're not careful.
You're right.
So luckily, with having a lot of cash, probably half of the trash business was built on cash, which allowed us to have better margins. I think when I started, there was like, man, it was kind of when everyone was getting into it. And there was like 12 or 13 guys that got into it. And at the end of the, I remember at the end of the year, I was the only one left. And so I think it was just a leverage issue.
A lot of people run out of cash or they have too much debt. It's like, so growing with your own equity is really tough. It takes a long time. It requires a lot of discipline.
Yeah.
But those businesses have a much better probability of succeeding. They're much more stable. They can weather the storm.
Yeah.
And those other guys, man, the wind blows the wrong way and they're done. Either they didn't have enough capital or all their profits are going to debt service.
Yeah. That doesn't go away.
Yeah.
Not quickly, at least.
That's hard to knock out, dude. It's hard unless you're making outsized income and disciplined about hacking it away.
Yeah. Yeah. I was like renting a house at the time. And then I moved into the cheapest house I owned, which was like $821 a month or something, while I was like buying homes and building the business. Cause I was like,
isn't that funny? You own multiple properties in a business and you're like, your home, your place you're going to live is like $800 a month.
Oh yeah. Yeah, well, at one point I was renting a house, and I remember someone gave me a hard time, and they were like, "Man, like you're always traveling for oil field. Like, why are you renting this little like crappy house?" And it wasn't a bad house, and I remember being like, "Should I tell them that I have like any other properties at the time?" But then I was like, "Nah, don't worry about it. Man. I'll just keep doing it." And so I actually just moved out of that house like 2 months ago.
Yeah,
and so it was just cheap. Like I was there for almost 6.5, 7 years, I think, and it allowed me to scale.
Guys like you and like me, our joy a lot of times doesn't come from living in the fanciest house or driving the Lamborghini.
Yeah.
It comes from what you do every day when you wake up. Your mind is free to go chase your ideas.
Yeah,
you have this bandwidth, and you get satisfaction from those things. I went through a period where I bought, a new Porsche and all this stuff. And I wasn't any happier, but I had less cash in my account and I had to go through some tough times to learn what really mattered. And today I could go buy a Bugatti, maybe a couple of them, write a check.
Yep.
But that isn't exciting, dude. Even if I got into a new Porsche today, I could care less. I buy like low-cost classic Mustangs.
Yeah.
It's fun, gets over the car itch, and doesn't cost much.
Yeah.
But it reserves capital for these things that are really what's satisfying.
Yeah, and it's more fun. I had one story, I don't know if I ever even told probably anybody this, but I had one story where whenever I was like, first started oil field, I bought a pretty nice house at the very beginning, and I bought an F-250 Platinum. And I remember,
you went all out.
Oh yeah, I was everybody. Like 22, 23, and I was like, dude, I made it. And at the time, that was like the thing was like when you're younger in Oklahoma, it's like, what truck are you driving? Kind of probably same as Texas.
Yeah.
And I remember I had just broke up with an ex-girlfriend. I had was supposed to go to Kansas for a job, and I put DEF in my diesel tank. And I remember thinking, I looked at my account. This is a true story. I had $890, and I was like, goodness. And my mortgage payment at the time was like $2,100 or something. And then my truck payment was the day after that, and it was like $1,100. And I remember thinking, I don't know how I'm going to pay for my house and my truck. And I just put DEF in my diesel tank. So I was calling everybody to like pull the tank out so I could make it to the job to make the money to pay for it. And I remember sitting in the driveway. I was on the phone, and I like hung up, and I was like, I'm never doing this again.
Why did I do this to myself?
Yeah, I moved out I think it was within 60 days.
You know what I like about that, though?
Yeah.
You were sitting there saying, basically, I'm never doing this again.
Yep.
Why did I do this to myself?
Yep.
I can control this, and I can make sure I'm never here again.
Yep.
That's what happened right there. Whether you realize it or not, those are all the things that happen.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Like I'm driving in a $13,000 truck now, and I have a nice house. But I'm getting married in a few weeks as well. So that's part of it. So, yeah, man, lessons learned. That pain sticks with you. I still remember that feeling. So
it sure did. So that's how you got here.
Yeah.
But Jake, you bought 250,000 square foot of industrial in the last 12 months. How'd you do that and never lose money?
Yeah, I think I mistyped that. I bought about 150, 160,000.
150,000 square foot. Okay.
And so that was, but from the time of starting to look for a deal to the time I think the first deal was done was cold calling for about 10 and a half, 11 months because I didn't know anything about that asset class. And I actually was kind of getting discouraged.
Learning on the job training.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That's the risky one when you're an investor and you're learning on the job. Holy cow.
Yeah. And that one, luckily, so the first deal, which meant a lot to me, and still to this day is just a cool deal. But that was one, contracted it. It was 18,000 square feet, had four 10-ton cranes. I haven't been in there in about 3 years or 2 years. And then it had, 10 and a half or so acres with it. It was high fence, 2 and 7/8 tubing. Like it's hard to break into. Got it for $825,000. And, when we had it under contract, called a guy that was there. It was actually in Manford. Called a guy that was there, and then he leased the building while it was under contract. So, because that one, the holding costs will eat you on industrial.
Yeah,
the first few deals.
So you didn't have to pay a broker. You didn't have to carry costs like for vacancy loss. Mm-hmm. And did you have to put any budget into renovating it to make it work for any?
Originally, that was the plan until he signed the lease. And then
he took it as is.
Dude, so, I mean,
that's a blessing and a curse. Your first deal went better than any deal ever could. So that's great.
Yeah.
But also, did you think they were all going to be like that?
Oh, no.
Okay.
No.
Good.
Well, I think at first I was like, man, this asset class will really work. But then that deal also, I think if you're going to jump into, I would like to hear this from you as well. If you're going to jump into a larger asset class that has heavy holding cost, your first deal really has, like, first and second are probably most important, which is actually a little bit more pressure because if you're looking at it as a business, as a standalone, at least the net cash flow from those two need to carry a few empty properties if you're buying vacant value add Class B empty like I was doing.
There are a lot of ways to skin that cat.
Yeah, unless you have another business that's fueling it. So.
Yeah, I mean, man, there's so many ways to do that. I've seen guys that have funds. I've seen guys that are just individuals. It's usually me and a partner or two of mine or like a friend of mine. And some of us are operators. Some of the guys are in other businesses, but they just know us and we have friendships and they want to deploy some cash.
Yeah.
So the operators get bigger returns than the investor guys. That's just how it works. But usually, I'll make an example. We bought a 30,000 square footer up in Dallas last year, and the tenants were paying like $4 a square foot. Market rate was like 9 or 10.
Yeah.
So we got a great deal. We convinced the owner to sell it to us on a seller carry.
Okay.
Building's worth about 4.5 with tenants at market rate.
Okay.
These are gross leases at $4. It was ridiculous.
Okay. So just under market and not good leases in place.
Yeah, and the owner was a doctor. He built this 20 years ago, 25. He was getting ready to do some estate planning. He was getting old and sick.
Okay.
So we offered him $2.5 million.
Mm-hmm.
He was asking a little over 3.25. Offered 2.5.
Okay.
Made him required that he carried the $2 million note. If we put $500,000 down, we got 4% interest only for 5 years, and we made it assignable.
Okay.
So we hit him pretty hard, expecting him to counter, and he didn't. He took it. But in that case,
awesome.
We figured there was going to be about $500,000 per down. We're going to have $300,000 or $400,000 in carrying costs, some cleanup and renovation costs. So we needed about $900,000 to get in the deal. And in this case, I thought we got a smoking deal. Normally, we'll put our own cash in it.
Yeah.
In this time when we did it, I had a lot of cash out in big deals and a lot of deals. I said, you know what? I don't need to put any cash. I found a great deal.
Yeah.
So we just raised all of the money.
Okay.
But we also made sure that we had 12 months of carrying costs in that raise. So we ended up raising, I think $100,000 more than we needed.
Okay.
And I remember asking myself, okay, if we don't need this money, we're paying interest on it. How's this going to work? Or accrued interest or a pref? So we took that money and put it in at the time we were getting 5% on the CDs at the bank.
CD,
And on that piece of the capital, we agreed to pay 7 or 8% and then have the right to turn it back over at any point.
Okay.
So we put it in a CD. We're collecting 5%, paying 7%, I think is what it was. There's only 2% difference.
Yep.
That extra cost was great to have that padding.
Yeah.
because I didn't know how long we were going to have vacancy.
And
Well,
you're paying 3% on it while it's sitting. Yeah.
right. So we
Yep.
so we just placed the capital in the moment. So I didn't have to worry about where's money coming from. How do we deal with it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, the neat thing is we got 2 tenants out quick and replaced one of them. And then we went back and renegotiated. One of them term was about to go up.
Okay.
We renegotiated them to market. So this dadgum thing only has 10,000 square foot leased. And we actually have a little bit of cash flow every month.
Your positive cash flow with only a third of it leased.
Yes.
Yeah.
So when that happened, we're in the clear. Now
Absolutely.
we're going for market rate for the other. And Trump's tariffs have actually slowed down leasing in that market.
Yeah.
So we had a big tenant that was going to take the 20,000 foot. They backed out.
Yeah.
It'll take longer, but
And when did you buy it?
when?
Yes, sir.
What are we in? We're in May. So it's August of last year.
Okay.
So it took us 3 or 4 months to like get tenants out, renegotiate these other folks.
Yep.
We've really been trying to lease that 20,000 square foot since about January, 6 months.
Okay. Yeah, I was budgeting in 2 years of holding time for about each property.
Well, your market might be different.
It
You're
is
a little
different.
slower market than Dallas, right?
Yeah, we're 2.7% vacancy in Tulsa and surrounding.
Damn, that's still good though.
So it's low vacancy. But I just helped a buddy on a deal in Sarasota, and Sarasota's 0.7% on industrial. So like I've actually been calling a little bit like down Florida direction because I'm like, man, if you can get a hold of a building, like somebody's gonna.
The back end is easy to deal with if you can get the front end.
Yeah, because
so it's going to be a lot more competitive on the front end.
It will. I did that it was a group out of Georgia that is his name's Adam. He's in our nonprofit that's actually out of Austin, and he found a deal, and I mean, slapped a fee on it, and it was pretty hefty. I don't know if he'd want me to share it, but and the guy was happy to take it, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Tulsa's 2 years of holding costs I was building into all of it. Now I think the longest one is set has been about 8.5, 9 months. There's one sitting, but it's already positive cash flow as well. But it had 20 acres with it. We can run through that deal later if you want to.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me hit some of these questions. So you negotiated a $2.1 million deal down to $825,000. Most people can't imagine doing that, but how'd you pull that off?
That's actually the deal I was getting ready to talk about as well. So that was one. It was owned by a private equity group that bought some kind of a weird deal. So to me, it was the tail wagging the dog. They had bought, it's in Cushing, Oklahoma. They had bought some like oil midstream tanks. I forget what you actually call those. Just the oil reserve tanks.
Uh-huh.
And the guy that sold 2 or 3 of the tanks was like, well, you have to buy my building as well. That's right adjacent to it. So the building was just sitting empty. I had just bought, it was an old metal recycling plant in the same town. And it was a 13,000 square foot building, 5.5 acres, and got it for the price of a house. And I was just driving around, saw that one. It had just tall grass, metal missing, holes in the roof.
The standard distress signals, no tenants, owners not paying attention, boom.
Yeah. I mean, and it had obviously been neglected for a few years. So I was meeting with the city that day, and they mentioned that building. And I was like, hey, do you have a guy's number? Call him. And he was like, we want actually, I think it was 2.2 million at first. And I was like, okay, man. And so I was like, well, let me go look at it. So I meet him over there, and he's like, yeah, like we just had to buy this with the tanks. And so their financials were public. If I remember correctly, I think we looked and I timed the contract to where it was coming up. They were doing a raise because there was no reserve sitting in the tanks at the time. They were pretty much like the shell of the tank was sitting on the ground, which means there's not like holdings. So they were doing a raise to backfill the project as far as I was concerned. And so I think we wrote the contract where it was like 3 or 4 days before the close of quarter 3 so that it helped with their raise. So it was just more so like more information the better you can negotiate.
Yeah.
So originally I came in, I told my partner on the building, I was like, I'm going to offer 600. He was like, no way. I was like, yeah.
So you're hitting him in the pants?
I was like, yeah. I was like, well, I think a lot of people reverse anchor themselves. Like you probably have seen this as well, where like a guy's like, man, they want 2.2. I'm going to offer him 1.6, see if I can get a deal.
But you're anchoring to his asking price, but there's no basis in your world for that. That's his anchor. That's not yours.
Exactly. And I think the guys.
So he's anchored you up there if you don't reverse anchor it.
I think a lot of guys are just pulling rope off of someone else's anchor.
Yeah.
And it's like, there's a lot more rope there than you think a lot of times. So I was like, I'm going to hit him around 600. And actually, when I called him, I was like, man, 700 sounds just a little bit more sharp. Like, for some reason, 600
sounds better.
Yeah, 600 sounded like, hey, I'm going to punch you in the face. 700 was like, at least it's kind of like, sounds like $750,000, you know, or something. And he was like, man, there's no way. Comes back like a week and a half, 2 weeks later, he calls me. He's like, what about 1.25? And I was like, I'm in the game now. So,
dude, he's cut his price in half. You know something's popping.
Yeah. And so I was like, no, man, I'm not interested. I was like, I don't know if you've been out there, or he had been out there. I was like, I don't know if you remember how bad it was. And which we have pretty good guys on the like construction side that we can handle a lot of stuff probably less or more cost effective than most surrounding people. But
yeah,
he comes back and then he was like, I think I went to 800. He came back. He was like, let me have a meeting. He had a meeting with the board, came back at 825 and then locked it up.
He has basically told you, look, I don't care about this asset. Need to get it off my books.
Yep.
My business is other stuff. This is not core to me. Clean house.
Absolutely.
He probably sold to you for what he had in it. Maybe less.
It was probably less because I think it was just part of that deal where like it doesn't make them any money. They're having to pay taxes on it. It's sat for 2 years. I think the taxes on it are like they're like $9,600 a year or something. So they were probably already paying out $18,000 or so over a 2 year period. But
I think the big difference is you took a property from an inefficient operator to an efficient one. This wasn't their standard business. They didn't really know what they were doing. They didn't really care about it.
Yeah.
And it was an afterthought, but they had to fool with it. You, on the other hand, are specifically focused on this. So that asset traded across an inefficiency to an efficiency.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've never thought about it that way. It came with 20 acres and 5 acres was separate, and we leased it to a windmill recycling company. And they actually are putting a building on it now. So they're building a building on that separate 5 acres.
I'll be darned.
I'm not sure the exact square footage, but it's that part at least at like $6,200 a month. And then there's 2 separate buildings that are $67,000 total, but the 12,000 square foot building is at least at $5 a foot.
Man, it's crazy. So, y'all's buildings up there are so much bigger than the typical one here. The real, less than 20,000 square foot is like, 10 to 15 is like the heart of this market.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, but I think you guys are a much more industrialized area. Like we have that big stuff.
Yeah.
But man, it sounds like your average building size is bigger than the average building size here.
Okay. Probably just more land to grow as well. Like it's there's not a whole lot of topo around Tulsa. So like if you want to throw up a building, you're not doing a whole lot of dirt work.
We've got a lot of small to mid-sized business, cabinet manufacturers, plumbing supply. There's just a massive amount of those that supply all of South Texas, based in San Antonio.
Okay.
So I think a little different mix of consumers as well.
Yeah, I've started kind of trickling down this way, just looking at stuff. It's just it's kind of the same thing. Like it takes about
we're more
6 months to
per
a year.
Foot, I bet you.
Oh, absolutely. Same with Northwest Arkansas right now. Like I looked at a few deals out that way probably 2 months ago.
Bentonville. That's an expensive area.
Bentonville, Fort Smith, all that, and it was like there's like no inventory. You can about build for probably I think 65-70% of what you'll see even like older buildings trading for. But it's just like they have some topo. The land's super expensive. It's a harder market.
You add it all up.
Yeah.
Something that caught my eye, Jake. You still cold call sellers every week with millions under your belt and millions in inventory. Why do you still cold call yourself?
We had 3 or 4 callers at one point that I tried to kind of go the VA route and utilize some of that with good training and all that. I didn't like it. We were spending $8,000 to $11,000 a month for about 9 months last year. I wasn't seeing the return that I wanted.
You think people are missing the human connection then?
So I think it's a lot tied to the asset class in which we're calling. So I don't know if you've seen this, but like the avatar of that class is so one thing that I use a lot is my grandpa is he's kind of a mentor of mine, and he's like 82 now. Pretty much now he plays pool and works on his farm. That's like all he does. Plays pool in the morning.
Cigars, whiskey, pool, and farm.
And but he doesn't drink. He just works.
Oh, good for him.
Yeah, he's a worker. But I grew up around him all the time. I was at his house every weekend, and so a lot of the avatar I found is very similar to my grandpa, which makes it very easy for me to relate and talk kind of that lingo. Like Sarah, my fiance, she kind of made fun of me when she first met me. She's like, "You don't hang around anybody young." And I was like, same. I don't learn anything from anybody my age. Right. There's a few guys, but
they say you're the average of the half a dozen people you're around or whatever. You pick those older guys, it's where you're headed quick.
Yeah.
That means you're wise for your age also if you connect with them.
Thanks, man. I think it's just more enjoyable conversation. But then going into industrial, it was kind of the same thing where like I can think about even the last 2 buildings where actually the last building that I bought, the guy had an offer for slightly more, about 5 or 10% higher than I did. And he actually told me, he was like, I'm going with you because I trust that you'll close this over the other guy. And
you built the credibility along the way.
Yeah. And I did the contract at his kitchen table, so it's like, there's certain little aspects of it.
What's the avatar? Sum it up to like age, gender, professional experience. Sum up your avatar of who the guys you're dealing with. Because
So,
I already know exactly what mine is.
You
We've
can
had
probably
talks.
guess it.
I bet you they align.
Minimum 60 years old plus.
Yep.
Less than 2 buildings owned. Used to operate in the building.
Dude, keep going.
Yeah.
You're 3 for 3 right now.
Either going to retire or looking to liquidate, or like some guy. I've had 2 that actually were just going to donate it to their churches. I don't know if that's just an Oklahoma thing.
Wow.
And I was like, okay. And then you can actually get kind of creative structure on that as well. But that's kind of like the typical avatar. If it's own personal name, if you don't see something in an entity, like I've seen that actually. Man, I came across a guy. Feel like this. I came across a guy that owned 1,129 industrial buildings, no residential.
Holy smokes!
Every single building was in his personal name.
Dude, we got
I was like, what?
We got a guy who owns about 400 single family houses here in town. It's him and his mom's name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was just like, this guy does not care. It's like either that or no one ever told me. I'm like, somewhere along the way, you didn't have somebody go, hey, you're on your 30th building. Maybe you should put this in an NC.
Some people think, when you're in corporate litigation, they come after you as much as they can. If you're like a big, massive corporation, but when you're running LLCs of our size, they can try to pierce that corporate veil a lot. We work hard to keep our accounting clean, but it's a common place to go through that corporate veil on these small entities. Yeah. People do bad jobs. I think a lot of guys say, fuck it. If they're coming after me, they're coming after me. That's common, I think.
Yeah. And I think you're starting to see a lot more where people will just name personal names. Like they'll have lawyers put everything on there. So.
It's interesting, man. Your avatar hits the nail on the head. Exactly. So ain't nothing different about your market than ours in that regard. Yeah, absolutely. One thing that I love about this that we started to articulate over time after analyzing enough deals, dude built the building for, let's just say it's $1 million today. Yeah. Dude built the building for $200,000. He's going to sell it to me for $500,000 or $600,000. Yep. And he's happy. He thinks it's great. And he's a good operator. He's built a good business. He's probably a wealthy guy somewhat, but he doesn't understand a cap rate and the way the markets behave and the exact state of the industrial market. He's thinking about the market 7 years ago when that broker gave him a price. Yep. So he is happy to sell to me for this price. Yep. And I'm happy to buy it for this price because I got plenty to go. Oh, that's so true. I had a deal in Memphis that had under contract, and when he priced it to me, I was like, man, that's a really good price. And I said, I just always ask him, like, where'd you come up with the price? Yeah. And sometimes you can get some info there that can help the negotiation. And it was the same thing. He was like, well, I have a broker I trust. And I was like, okay, when did he tell you this price? And he said 2009. And I was like, well, the market was at the bottom. Let's go. Or maybe it was 2012 or something, but it was a while back. I was like, why are you still holding on to this price? But he didn't know anything on it. Same thing. He built it. He had a rough tenant in there. He was just tired of it. So I think, a lot of guys don't want to be landlords, or they just don't know. Dude, I'm a landlord and I don't want to be a landlord, but it's the best way I can earn a lot of money. So I do this. Yeah. It's either that or try to figure out how to get into med school, and that ain't going to fly with me. So let's be landlords. Yep. Exactly. All right, I got another one for you. You're flipping up to half a dozen houses a month, managing 22 deals at a time, and you say that's because of a simple system. What's that? So right now, I looked that when I filled that out yesterday, I looked and we have 22 houses going. Now that's under contract, under renovation, listed for sale, or we have some assignments in there that are actually. But that's some good working inventory. These are projects, dude. Yeah. So Devin is he handles all of the construction side. So he's got about 45 guys, pretty much full time right now. I mean, they're all 1099, but they're very loyal to him and go project to project. So our construction cost is very efficient. I've actually had a few guys see it recently, and they're like, I don't know how you're doing it. You're not having a third party, hardly anybody. You're doing we don't third party anything. That's a whole different ballgame, dude. You're not paying for all these layers of management and accounts payable and receivable and all that stuff. Yeah. You're collapsing that by paying by the hour. Yeah. We actually streamlined this about 3 months ago. So right now, we have pretty much no staff. It's pretty much me and Devin. Wow. And then so he uses Instagant for all the Gantt chart side of it, and then that's tied in with Builder Trend, and then that will help handle. So every contractor has a slight layover, right? So if you have, I'm gonna mess up the order, but if you have electric and then plumbing right behind it, you have a 1 day crossover. Then maybe they're there for the same day. So there's never a drop day. So I actually was just looking. We bought a house because you control the labor. You can make that happen. But I got days where no one's at my project for days or a week at a time because I'm waiting for the next trade to free up. Yeah. If you control the labor, you can do that. Yes, we have no dead days, and a lot of them work Saturdays too because they want to. So if they once one house their trade is done at that house, the exact next day they're on to the next house. Now, one thing that he's done a really good job of is we want people to build out their own crews and empower them that way. So he'll take a guy that's really good and efficient and organized,
and then he'll be like, hey, I need you to go find 3 or 4 other guys. So now what we have essentially is like
Hierarchy.
7 or 8 of these like kind of rock star guys
Yeah.
that have 3 or 4 guys underneath them that they can handle 2 houses at a time or 3 houses at a time, and they can rotate.
That's how it
And
works
then
in
we
the
have-
oil field, dude. Exactly.
Yep.
Those guys,
That's an old field idea.
if they hire their people, they have control, authority, and autonomy.
Yep.
But they do better with those people than me hiring some random dude and be like, I'm your boss now.
Yeah, they don't
That's
like it.
different.
Yeah. And then, we keep the work consistent. So like right now, I haven't done an industrial deal this year. Right now I actually started looking kind of around the nation as well. So I kind of flew out to a few different markets just to try it out. But
you think that's a good answer or bad answer?
Do what?
Do you think that's a good answer or bad answer yet?
Yeah.
Have you pilfered your market to where there's nothing left yet?
No, there's not.
And I say stay at home.
Yeah.
A lot of our deals, we did a lot of industrial deals in Houston and Dallas when the market was just blazing hot.
Yeah.
But as the market's cooled off, we have actually started picking up deals again back in home because I would rather have them close to me if I can.
Yeah.
And this is a great market, and deals are getting easier to deal with again.
Well, and that's kind of why we are increasing the volume on homes as well. Is I haven't raised money. Like I don't have investors on any of the deals.
Mm-hmm.
So that's actually where I'm pivoting a lot of it right now. So a lot of the traveling was actually connecting with guys that want to invest in industrial. But then, the homes is a way for us to just stack capital for ourselves to put into deals if we want to tackle, say a sub $2 million deal or something like that.
Jake, you give away a large percentage of your profits to charities. In a cutthroat business, that's actually really rare. Why is this part of your model?
It's something that me and Devin talked about when we started doing a lot of the work together. I'm part of a group called Aspen Collective that's ran out of Austin and Atlanta, where we give actually a percent of our gross every year. Not net, but gross, which is painful.
Yeah.
Devin has a lot of missions focus right now. He travels quite a bit overseas. He's very involved with his church, and so we decided, hey, a large percentage of our profit will go towards helping either families, people that he knows, smaller organizations. A lot of it's tied in internationally, but a lot we put quite a bit, or at least I do, into like anti-sex trafficking organizations in Atlanta, and then. There's about 6 or 7 organizations that I've helped put funds into for about 4.5 years now, consistently every year. I think it's great to have a lot of money. I really like the side of it to where there's an immediate need filled. So
you're getting to use that money for a good cause now along the way instead of being an old guy and donating it as you die.
Yeah.
You don't get to see the fruits of that. Here you get to participate. So it's a different way now.
Yeah. For me, it does help drive the business. When you start seeing some of the, I would say, I don't know how you say returns on nonprofit.
Your business, they are returns. Your
Yeah.
business is making a difference. It's making a difference in your life, in your pocketbook. It's making a difference in these people's lives.
Yeah.
And that's a different kind of business. Not everybody's business is like that.
Yeah. One of the coolest ones that I like is, I think a lot of people give money to organizations. They're not sure where it goes. So
Oh, gosh.
we really like to know where the money's going. But this
But
year,
you're involved now. Instead of you giving it in your will once you're gone and who knows where it goes, you get to participate. You get to make sure it goes to the right place.
I don't really want to wait till I'm 70. I mean, I'm 30 right now. And we did one. This is a really cool story. I'll keep it short, but it was a hospital in Libya that they needed mobile units. So we bought them Land Cruisers this year so that they could do mobile units.
Oh, that's
so
cool.
for me, that's a really cool, okay, that's a very tangible gift.
Is. And that makes a big difference in their operation. You're assisting their operation big time with 1 or 2 items.
Well, they couldn't reach a lot of the villages because they couldn't get the cars there. So it was they were like, this is the specific cars we need. And so that was a really cool, they put the logo on it and all that. But that's just, that for me, that stuff's very rewarding. So it's, I guess, to each his own on that.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
So, all right. People are mystified by going from house flipping to industrial. You've kept both lines, though, and I can understand why. But do you find industrial properties the same way you find houses?
No. And I'm not that great at marketing. I'd say I'm pretty decent at branding, but it's crazy. When we looked, I get 46 or 47%, somewhere around there, of the leads that for even houses or even title issue properties and all that, I get from my social, from Facebook.
Oh, really?
Which is really weird because I think a lot of people
referrals.
Yes, where it's just people. I get a lot of messages. So I actually looked yesterday. I had 9 messages where people were like, "Hey, I know this house or whatever." And we have a really good name for like closing. And like, I don't know if we've busted a deal in the last 24 months, but so like that whole side of it is kind of crazy to me because I was running like just the typical like 2,000-3,000 outbound texts a day, some regular SEO stuff, which it's great. I'm not a marketing genius, and so I just kept pushing Facebook, and I was like, I'm getting leads here, and I know I can get 3 or 4 leads a month off my Facebook for just homes. And
is that where industrial's coming from?
No, industrial's mostly calling. I think one building was a connection off Facebook, but there was a severe decline in lead conversion for industrial because I think most of the general population don't know what industrial even means. So like you say, how go find an industrial building, and they're like, cool. And then like I had a guy call me one time, and he's like, man, you started posting these. He's like, I didn't realize these things were everywhere. Like I drive past them every day. I just didn't even look at them. It's because it's just so like it just doesn't catch your eye. It's just tall white buildings.
Specialty, but everyone hears about a house and they see if everyone knows where a vacant house is. Everybody's friend has a problem.
Yeah.
So that referral network is huge.
Yeah, absolutely.
So then, okay, so like 40% of your housing is coming from social media, but when it comes to the industrial, how exactly are you finding? Because that's a big question people always ask me. Yeah. And people do it radically different ways. How do you exactly find those?
You want to kind of compare on this? See what's worked for you? Okay. Because I think I mostly bootstrapped most of the leads, where it was like I would sit in a car and I would have my phone and I would be like running through calls or something. But I would go to an industrial park and I would be like, that morning.
You're calling the industrial park while you're in the park?
Yeah, yeah. So
that's cool.
But that's in Tulsa. You can get everywhere in 15 minutes. And now I'm not saying that's the most efficient. That's just how I started doing it, and that's how almost every one of them came about. But I would go to a park and I would go building, but I would pull in front of them so I could look at it. Or I'd be on Street View and I would just have a massive list running and it would just be dialing. So, like one of my big things is I don't run anything, I don't run off of like a set script because then it sounds too scripted to me. I wing almost every call, which is also kind of I know. 2
real different trains of thought.
Because you may completely disagree with me on that. And
I don't personally, but I'm a believer of scripts also.
Yeah. I have a general script, but it's not like a line by line for everything. It's not like Hormozy.
Right.
So but like one thing I use a lot is like if I call somebody, I'll be like, hey, my name's Jake. You don't know me. And then like that just immediately de-escalates. I found that to help really well. Like I always try and de-escalate as quick as possible. I don't want to be like, hey, is this your building? Is this what I...
It's every now and then they're like, what the hell? Who are you?
Well, every now and then you'll get a guy that's like, yeah, it's my building. What do you want? Which I actually like those guys because then I'm like, oh, I'm just calling you to this. I don't want to sell it. And then it's like, okay, well now you already know where you're at. And then you can keep calling them and be like, I know you, I sorry I frustrated you last time. You can keep the follow-up's easier with guys that are blunt. Yeah. It's the guys that like pad around information that takes time.
You got to work through it all. You're right. So on the scripts, one thing I like about a script is you can take a person who has less experience and put them on a script.
That is true.
And they'll perform much better. A guy like you or I know 5 or 6 main points that I got to get into, and I open up the call, figure out who I'm talking with, figure out how to deal with them, and then get to those points the best I can.
Yeah.
But I don't have to have a script for that, but I'm experienced. So are you. But if we have a new guy in here and we can get them on a script, they can start performing much better, much quicker.
Yeah.
So that's where scripts really work.
I agree. And that's where I think your business is bigger than mine already with, you have guys that you can plug and play with. Right now, it's just me and Dev.
But see, I think the difference between those is really only right here because you could literally go home, hire someone for $2,000 a month.
Yep.
Is their fixed pay just enough for them to pay their bills and have a place to sleep at night?
Yep.
And give them 10% of the profit, and that's your commission. They could be up to productivity in 2 or 3 weeks, working side by side with you every day.
Yeah.
And you now have that. You just haven't chosen to make that a priority or bought into it yet.
Absolutely.
But the moment you're ready for that, your company goes from 2 people to 3 people to 6.
Yeah.
And then if you get the decent people that help pay for themselves, it just it changes so quick.
Yeah. No, I think you're absolutely right. I probably should do that.
Well, I said it that way for a reason.
Yeah, no, I should do that.
Part of we're going to spend some time talking today, and I'm going to learn stuff from you. People out there are going to learn something from you. But my hope is that folks go home and say, I'd like to challenge people.
Oh, yeah.
Because you're a bright guy, you're hardworking, you've come a long way. But I also think you can go so much further, so much faster. And a friend of mine challenged me really damn hard about 3 years ago on some stuff. And I remember taking a little bit of offense to it, but also looking myself in the mirror saying, this dude makes 3 times what I do right now.
Absolutely.
Well, it's funny because I'm making about 3 times what he does right now.
Yeah.
And he's the one that pushed me to do that. And it was very small changes.
Yeah.
I had to get out of some comfort zones and do some things.
Yeah.
So I hope some of those will go.
Oh,
with
absolutely.
You today.
I think one thing that I love is actually criticism, and I'm not okay if it's in public.
Good.
I just don't care. So if someone's making more money than you, they're just making more.
There's
like
always going to
your
be
operation.
Somebody. There will always be someone making more money
Always.
than you.
Yeah. And if you're not willing to just be like, yeah, I want to listen to this guy, then it's like, go back to working a job.
Oh, that's fair. That's absolutely fair. All right. So you're telling me you're cold calling folks from the truck or from the house with a Google Earth, Google Street View open. You're not using a script. The data that you're getting for these guys is coming from where?
I'll either pull large lists. So, I mean, there's a few different,
like a big industrial list from a list service.
Yeah, you can use.
And you'll skip trace it in that program.
Yeah, if I'm sitting in front of a building, I'm usually just using Skip Genie or like True People Search, or like I have 2 or 3 other ones that I just have descriptions on that I'll rotate until I can get the number.
Okay.
My thing is like I'll call who I think is the owner, and then I'll call the next number, and then I'll call the next number, and then I'll call the son, or I'll call the wife.
Keep going
until I get a hold of somebody, and then I move. But
I think you have the ability to not use the extreme quality data, like the high end stuff, because you're calling people that have owned property a long time. They have the same phone number a long time. They probably don't move their home very often.
Yep.
In our business, we have to have the best quality data because we're calling transients, people living under bridges, someone who's been out of jail. Like you have really good data, but in this situation, you don't have the best data because the decent providers will get you there, I think.
Yeah, I mean, we'll pull just regular, foreclosure, high equity, non-owner or high equity owner. Actually works really well in industrials. That doesn't work as well with homes. But you can use direct skip for like mass lists. Sometimes that's a little bit off. There's a guy at Chicago. His name's Ryan, and I think his last name. He owns Skipify, which is a pretty advanced Skipify.ai. Okay. I've used it as well. It's a little bit more expensive, but he's pretty adept to like searching for larger asset classes, and he can go in. He's the owner as well.
Oh, okay.
Lives in like a penthouse in Chicago, and he can go in and like tweak it. I think he actually will go in and like kind of mess with maybe the coding side of it. I don't know, but because I told him like something very specific I wanted, and he was like, "Give me a day or two, to figure it out." So I kind of like that, like knowing someone that has a really good tracing software.
Yeah.
So that's something that somebody could use as well.
So what does your pitch sound like? Because you're calling Johnny, who's owned the building for 40 years, ran his business for 25 out of it. He had a tenant in there after he retired, and the tenant's now gone, and the place is vacant, the weeds are growing up, and you notice he's still paying his taxes on time.
Yep.
So the real estate is distressed in terms of like performance, but the owner maybe not distressed. What's your pitch to this dude to let him feel comfortable with letting go of this place?
Yeah.
And for a fair price.
Yeah. So I'm usually generally quick at reading personalities over the phone after the first few lines. If I get someone, I think you run into this, you get someone that's like an engineer, they just want to know like the data, what's your offer, all this. I try not to make an offer on the phone and like initially because Tulsa I can get anywhere in 10 minutes. So I usually try and go from phone to meeting same day. So a lot of times I'll be like you're really good at this, so you get on the phone, you're probably like very blunt, like here's what I need done, thank you, bye. Because I'm kind of that way as well, but not with sellers as much. But I'll be like, hey man, like he's like, well, I don't really want to sell it. I'll be like, hey, I know you probably don't want to sell it. I noticed it was vacant. Is there a chance I could just meet you over there today? And he'd be like, well, I don't want to meet you over there. I don't want to sell it. And at that point, it's like it goes one of two ways. But he's like, well, what's your offer? And be like, look, to be fair to you, that's what I normally like. To be fair to you, if I can see it, I can give you a better offer. Than if you just want me to, do a drive-by. I was like, do you want a drive-by appraisal or do you want someone walking your house?
Immediately, he now cannot say, I want the low offer.
Right.
He must say he wants the better one, which inherently means he's got to get his ass over there to meet you today.
Yeah. And then I'll always use the like, well, have you ever bought a, property that you didn't walk through? And they're always like, no. I mean, sometimes the guy will be like, yeah. And I'm like,
then he
whatever.
realizes he's being unreasonable with you.
Yeah.
And when he puts himself in an unreasonable position, it's like, all right, quit being a shithead. Get over there.
I like to tail in purchases too. So like, hey, I just bought this one. Like if I buy something in a park, I like to tail in the entire park. And so if for example, I bought one in a Broken Arrow and it was like I could hit every neighbor. And then when I had guys over there working, like I was ripping it out, putting flooring in and some roof repairs and all that, I would actually go over there with my laptop while the guys were there because you'll naturally just get a bunch of those like old guy owners that'll walk over. So like I met 4 of the owners. That was my office for the day. Like I just have like a little thing in my truck and I was just sitting there doing my regular calls and everything. But like they would walk up and be like, hey, are you working on this? Like, no, I just bought it. And then that turned into another lead. that is still working.
We did that same thing with houses. Once we got an
just
area, we'd canvass the area, talking, knocking, kind of
by the block,
being there. Yeah.
That works really well in Tulsa. I'm speaking very specifically to like.
You must have a lot of owner occupants around there. We have a lot of landlord situations.
Oh yeah. There's becoming less and less, and then we're starting to see some private equity dive into Tulsa. That there's probably a lot more here in Dallas.
Really?
But I've never syndicated anything, but I've seen some guys that are syndicating industrial. Okay, I guess you can pay more, but what do you think about that?
These are two different business models. So early on, I would look at them and say, I guess they're willing to accept smaller return. I didn't have as global of a view, but my brother-in-law is running a fund out of the East Coast. I've spent some time with him.
Yeah.
I know some other guys I'm in a deal with that work out of a good-sized fund out of Dallas. Okay. It's a different world.
It is.
They're taking institutional capital that they're trying to align like annuitized payments, and they're deploying that. So they're seeking a smaller return to begin with. Their goal is to deploy much larger dollars and take a management fee.
Yep.
Those funds are looking for depreciation. Some of those operators are. So for us, I'm looking for a 15% return. I need a 15 cap.
Yeah.
And I feel good about that deal. I'm willing to use some debt. I'm willing to use some equity.
Yep.
I like it. But these guys are looking for something completely different.
Yeah.
They also want to sell in 5 years because the cash flow, they're going to take smaller cash flow annually, but they need that exit to give them a good enough yield in the 5-year term to make it worth it.
Yeah.
They're not planning on and also too, the capital they have doesn't have an infinite lifetime. So they've got to align the capital with the investment, with the business model.
Yeah.
So raising money has this structure, and it has that structure because it kind of serves all masters, so to speak.
Yeah. It's a lot of work. I kind of feel like, and I may be completely wrong.
It is a lot of work.
I haven't dove into it as much, but I feel like a lot of those guys, they live off acquisition fees, promote dollars, and exits.
And that can be a problem because you have self-serving guys in there who are a broker who is getting paid a fee to put that deal in his fund.
Yeah.
But how good of a deal is it? If he's getting $500,000 fee on that deal, dude, he's incentivized to do a deal.
Yeah.
Right. I don't know that I like that.
Yeah. I've kind of seen it to where a lot of that money's 5 to 7 year holds, it looks like, and then they're trying to turn before the next fund is up or the fund's, they're trying to transition.
But you hope that they're turning in a time where market's strong, gets complicated.
Well, yeah, and it's kind of hard, like, the side I looked at it was, I was like, it's kind of hard to know in 7 years where market's going to be. Now, I think industrial will still be fine, but, it's like.
But the difference in a warehouse being, I got one right now and just sold for a little under $1 million. If I would have sold when the market was hot, I'd have probably sold it for 1.3.
Right.
So it lost a quarter of its value.
Yeah.
I was having to sue the municipality to get the zoning fixed.
Yep.
So I didn't have the ability to sell then.
Mm-hmm.
So it damaged me a bit. But
yeah.
In total, though, we don't raise money. Generally, it's me or a couple of the partners here. I'll take a third, you take a third, you take a third and do it. Or I'll take half. The times where we do raise money is these large land deals. We've got one right now, it's $14 million. So that's really hard. I don't care who you are, especially if you're an operator to do that.
That's
so
awesome.
Me and the partners will put half of our own money into that.
Yeah.
The other half will be raised money.
Okay.
But on most of the industrial stuff, I've only raised capital on one of them. The rest of it is just us. We try to put down about a third, finance 2/3.
Yeah.
And as long as we're buying where we need to buy, half of the net operating income goes to debt service. The other half goes to cash flow.
Yeah.
And it's usually really fair numbers if it fits that model.
Yeah.
But that's with the current interest rates.
Yeah.
When the interest rates were in the past, dude, you had so much more cash flow, or you could be willing to pay a little more.
Yep. Yeah.
But I'll tell you, so recently, one of my daughter's friends' dad has a boutique mortgage brokerage, commercial, and he takes insurance company money and deploys that, and they're trying to align an annuitized payment with this. Mm-hmm. But, dude, their interest rates are high 5s, low to mid 6s right now.
Yeah.
And the commercial lenders are 7 to 8%.
Yeah, absolutely. There's some insurance money. Was it life insurance? Is that what he was using?
I think it's life insurance, but I'm not certain.
I've seen a few, I don't really know even how to classify this. I came across it 2 weeks ago with agency debt as well, which essentially is non-recourse.
Yeah.
But it was in that same 5 3/4 to 6%. And I'm like, 5 3/4, 6% non-recourse sounds interesting.
And you know what else they'll do? Yes, it's non-recourse, but also they'll do this on 20 and 30 year terms.
Oh yeah, no.
Whereas commercial banks are 7, 5.
Yeah. No, a lot of this was on 30. So I haven't dove into it yet, but I think it's interesting.
The only negative I've found is they have they'll have prepayment penalties.
Yes,
Once
heavy.
they align it with this annuity, and the difference is the prepayment penalty is the current interest rate versus yours, the delta.
Yep.
With some metric, that's your prepayment.
Gotcha.
So I ran the math and thought, what if I get into a deal and in 6 or 7 years, our partners just say, you know what, we'd rather take the cash than keep owning this.
Yeah.
The prepayment penalty isn't bad if you bought it right and you've cash flowed like a son of a gun, had low interest, and you got to pay a couple $100,000 for a prepayment penalty, but you're going to make a few $1,000,000. Who cares? Pay it.
Well, okay, so that's interesting because this reminds me of another thing that happened with industrial was I looked at a deal. It was 465,000 square feet, sale leaseback, really big deal.
That's a big one.
And the lease was actually written to where the landlord was pretty savvy. He was out of Denver, and it was written to where the rent escalations, instead of it being like 2.5%, 3% or whatever, he did CPI index plus 1, I think is what it was. So whenever we actually underwrote it, I was looking at this and I was like, getting like 4.2, 4.3% increases. But the tenant may not really even be paying that much attention to it. It's just it goes up every year. And so I kind of started looking at that and I was like, I don't know if that would come in play with larger assets, but it's kind of similar what you're saying with the debt, with the delta difference. It's just another small margin. If you had that kind of debt lined up with a really strong high credit tenant in there, and you had CPI, so then you have a lot lower debt and then you have a lot larger rent increases. You start getting those margins on a deal like that.
And you extrapolate that over 5, 10 years.
It's millions.
Holy cow.
Yeah. Yeah, because their rent, I forget what it was. It was...
When you start getting into something like that, though, you've got to have a high credit tenant.
Absolutely.
A lot of my tenants are just local credit, Johnny's Welding.
Yeah.
And those guys can pay their... I like them. They pay their bills. They're usually fine.
Yeah.
But when you start making... When you get into a much bigger deal that's going to hurt you a lot more, the state could be vacant or things like that.
Yeah.
Or if it's in a market that's a little riskier, man, that makes...
Yeah.
I don't know.
And to me, that looked like what I would consider a fund deal, right? Where it's a good placement of money. Because I've talked to a few of those guys. One of my buddies in Atlanta, they're running a fund for industrial, and it's mostly sell leaseback. And they look at stuff so different. I'll look at a deal, I'm like, that's a good deal. I'll find a deal. I was working one in Nebraska, and sent to them, and they're like, I'm like, this is a great, and they're like, well, because of how the roof line looks on the retrade, we couldn't trade that to institutional because the appearance is different. And I'm like, it's a good building though. The roof just looks funky. It was all sawtooth.
Yeah.
But the roof was actually behind it was normal. But they're like, but it just looks weird. And I'm like, well, pull it off. It's
That's
those guys just think so differently in industrial. But
another thing I noticed about those guys, fund type guys, they're office jockeys. A guy like you or I will say, what is it that I need to do to make this work?
Yep.
And for them, they don't want to do that. They would just rather look at the next deal from the next broker because they don't want to leave that desk. They don't really want to think it fits this model or it doesn't. And what are the fees I'm going to suck out of this thing?
Yeah. Yeah. Office time is
also
pretty...
too, though, you're putting your name on the deal.
Yeah.
This is you and your business. Yes, it's an LLC, but you're the face, you're the name. If it goes bad, it's you.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
we're shaking hands.
And you're dealing with a seller who might be seller financing it. If you're going to use a bank, that banker knows you.
Yep.
When you're up there in the institutional world, they are raising money from other investment bankers who understand the risk profile. And if the deal falls apart, that's how it works.
Yep.
They're not going to personally be mad at you because that's just how it works in the institutional world. There's
not a whole lot of skin in it. Yeah.
Right.
Well, and office time is productive, but...
So if there's no skin in the game, it's a whole lot easier to say, oh, I'll do a $20 million deal as opposed to a $3 million deal.
Yeah.
I could care less because the downside's different.
Yeah. I went to a happy hour. It was for a company out of New York. It was called Patterson, just a big, large, fund of funds. And the guy sourced a couple $1 billion from a New York fund and then is just funding these smaller industrial funds. Just crazy model. Mm-hmm. And, he'll get percentages on all of it, but they won't do anything below, I think he said 500,000 square feet. They only want massive buildings. And I'm sitting there and all these guys, I was like, yeah. And I was, they were asking about some of the stuff that I own. I told them and they're like, oh, that's cool. And I was like, what are you guys looking for? Clearance height and all this, whatever. And they're like, well, we just, it was some of the questions I asked, I was like, that's pretty normal questions. I'm not saying that it was dumb by any means. They just look at stuff differently. Because some of those guys were making just bukus of money off fees.
That's right. Yeah, it's a whole different world.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier that you really weren't wanting to use a lot of debt or didn't. Tell me about that.
For which part?
For the industrial, is that right?
Industrial is just bank financing, 75 or 80%. The rest is just money down.
Okay, so then two sides of this business. You get the house flipping and remodeling. Mm-hmm. There's that. And then on the other side is the industrial. On the house side, what's your capitalization look like?
So it's either cash or lenders right now on front end, but we're turning most everything.
What kind of lenders?
I still use some like pretty low interest hard money as well.
Because they're simple.
Very simple. I have a few buddies that lend as well.
You know what? The rates I've noticed in hard money hasn't gone up very quick at all, but the bank rates go up. So the difference between a commercial loan at a local bank and a hard money is shrinking.
Well, I can get right now hard money at the same as bank rates. So it's kind of one of those.
It's easier to do.
It's way easier. So they'll, like he's a friend of mine. Like he'll let me, he'll run 5 or 6 at a time of those, and then we're moving it right now towards where it's just our cash, some of that for quick deals. We're starting to do a lot more of the curative side. That's where I'm pushing everything. That was from the time I saw you at conference, and then we actually are doing one right now that I was like, if we can just stack, because I think if we do 35, 50 homes or something like that in a year, I think we can do like 15 to 20 of those like really good deals that take more time and make, I think, double. So it's kind of a weird.
You'll use a lot less capital.
Yeah.
You'll be surprised when you talk about 15 or 20 houses. That's a deal and a half a month. That's not really that much.
No, it doesn't take much time.
A lot fewer calls, a lot less construction work, a lot less capital or debt.
Yeah.
There's a lot of benefits to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, I don't know that we'll keep doing like just fix and flip model. We're doing a lot of really quick turn velocity. So like, especially on like duplex, triplex, quads, a lot of guys out there looking, and we've had some really good 100K plus hits on taking a quad and just doing like, we had one that was like $890 in repairs and it was like 110K profit or something like that. And it was like a 59-day turn. And there was like,
that's fast.
Yeah, it's fast. And, but we've had probably.
Now, did you take that to market or did you wholesale sell it type?
No, that was take it to market.
Okay.
And it was just a lead that I actually got from a mastermind group I'm in from a guy in New York that called me and I was like, I paid him $5K for the lead. And
he just didn't know how to size it up. It's in your market. Let's see if you want it.
Yeah. And that's what I'm saying is like, I get a lot of leads from guys out of state. Like I hopped in, I think there's like so many people in that, in like Pace's group, like the sub 2 group. Mm-hmm. And I was like, man, it's not that expensive. Like, I'll just see if it's even worth it. I don't like sub 2 that much, but like
you have a very low level of sophistication and experience in that group.
It's kind of dangerous.
So it is. But if anybody who has a deal and they don't size it up well, you'd be the smart guy that could probably do it.
Yeah, and then I hopped on a podcast with Renda, who's like, I think the TC for Pace, something like that. And then now that's like, I get a lot of leads from sub 2. Now, I've never even done a full sub 2 deal because I think a lot of it's like very small equity. People are trying to buy the rate. You can get stuck in them very quick. But
that and people like it because it's little cash in. And I honestly think that whole marketing message for sub 2 is show up and do deals with little cash.
It is.
That's it. Now you're now filtering everything about your investment thesis by having little cash in it.
Yeah.
I want to filter by a really good deal and then all the other stuff follows. I'll figure out how to pay. I'll figure out this. I'll figure out that.
And I think Pace has built a great community with it. Yeah. But I think, with having the transaction coordinators in there a lot, I don't think legal exposure is understood by a lot of the students.
Oh my gosh.
So
I'm shocked that there haven't been blowups. I'm not picking on them at all. I don't know them a ton.
Because that group has made me a lot of money. Very valuable.
Yeah.
And it's just it's a high numbers group, and I don't really go to the meetups because I just haven't, but, I don't know. Sorry. That was a tangent.
No, it's all right. So with you being, I'm going to go back to something we talked about earlier, with you being heavily involved in the deal flow.
Yep.
Look at your business for the next 5 years.
Okay.
Where do you think it's going to go? And where do you see yourself in that?
So I actually called Devin last night on this and I was like, I know he's going to ask me where we're going in 5 years.
Good.
And I was like, what do we think about this? And he was like,
maybe you don't know. That's okay. You can tell me.
Well, I was actually thinking back to 5 years ago, I was running trash trucks, like driving, and then was selling oil field pumps. And so kind of one of those where I was like, I don't know that I can I can know where I want to go in 5 years, but I don't know if an opportunity presents itself if I don't take it or what not. Fair. So like we had a lot of stuff going. Like Devin has like a pest control distribution business. I still am moving some sub pumps and oil field that I still have old customers, and then it's just wholesale and they're quick. It's quick buck. It takes like 30 minutes, and I can still design wells, but very rarely do I do it anymore. So we had several though. Like he had some of the service businesses going. We had the houses. The park. I have car washes. And so I literally this was like 2 weeks ago. I was like, let's double down on houses. Let's just stack really good base hits.
Clean up your workload.
And then let's focus on pushing the business towards curative while we have all this going. So
Good.
like one thing we're doing this year is like me and Devin both have like really nice houses for our families now. We're paying our houses off. That sounds crazy because people are like, why would you ever pay your house off? For me, it's just I don't have to say yes to anything I don't want to.
Because you want to.
So
It's your choice.
yeah, like everything else is paid off. So I was like, that's like our thing we're doing at the end of this year is we're paying the houses off. And then it's like, okay, now we have so much time because we don't have to say yes to that. And then we're just going to just keep stacking those base hits and then moving it towards learning your side of the business.
Man, so my real question is where your business headed in 5 years, but it took a different turn.
Yeah, sorry.
Well, no, it's okay. This is good too. You went backwards and talked about where your business has come from in 5 years. And when you look at it from that perspective, it can be shocking because you're young and you're hungry, and where you are headed is probably much further than you would anticipate. If you would have gone back and asked yourself, where am I going to be in 5 years? You wouldn't believe that you're going to tell these stories that you're telling right now.
Not at all.
So it's shocking how much you can do in 5 years. Well, the next question is, if you've done this in the first 5 years, it could be almost scary to ask yourself what you can see in the next 5 years.
Yeah.
But personally, I've had very similar experiences. And you say, okay, I'm going to get a new home. I'm going to be able to pay it off. I'm going to finally start driving a slightly nicer car. And you're making all these in a very disciplined way.
Yeah.
But in the next 5 years, you probably have no idea where you're going to land, but it will be probably even farther than you come in the first 5 years.
Oh, absolutely. Because I bought my first house. I actually got a Facebook notification this morning. It was 3 years ago today.
Oh, wow.
So I was thinking about that because I went back to the 5 year question, and I was like, man, I did the first deal, that $35,000 house 3 years ago.
Dang.
And so I was like,
another thing though is being in real estate 3 years, within a year and a half, you started doing much larger commercial deals. That's a fast growth trajectory as well.
Yeah, and then a lot of it's on seller finance, and all the parks are on seller finance. So like both the parks that I own, they're great assets, have really good management in place. Both were only 10,000 down. A lot of it was like, I also think people don't think they can get into larger stuff because they're not willing to negotiate to the point of like, you can, because the cash flow and all that stuff is great now, and it covers more than we need. And
those same super unsophisticated sellers, nice guys, good business people, but they're just not mega sophisticated.
Yeah.
They're also willing to be flexible on the sale and the terms and installment sales and all that.
I think you can go like, so a good example is I bought a building, kind of probably more like of what you see around here, is like 8,900 square feet. The guy built it himself. It was 1992 build, but I would consider it Class A. Like just, it was a cabinet company, but I mean, it was just him and his wife, meticulously maintained. Bought it $100K, $110,000 down. The rest is on seller finance 30-year note. And there's a bit balloon in there on year, I think 5 right now. That we'll probably see if I can push it. But it has equity in the building immediately. But it's like, you go do a deal like that, like say that's your first deal, you probably could call everyone in your phone and be like, hey, I'll give you, 30% of this deal for $100K, and I'll give you, 8% return on your money or pref or something like that. I think just people think it's really far away.
Also, what you just said sounds more complicated and people are intimidated. They've got to understand this stuff, figure it out, and then have the confidence to call their cousin or their neighbor and say, dude, put $100,000 with me. Like, that goes back to a saying that I heard lately and really love. It's no one knows what they're doing. Some of us do it anyway.
Yeah.
Man, no one really taught you this, I can tell.
No, this was just from diving in deals.
You're thinking it through, you're figuring it out. What's the next answer? What do I have to do to make this work? Let me just take a shot.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's just calling people and being like, how would you do this? Like there's other good investors in Tulsa, and you can bounce ideas off. And I think guys liked it when it was starting because it was like, man, I'm going to go for it,
Yeah.
So the parks have been great. I'd buy more parks. It was pretty flooded for a while. I don't own any of the homes. Car wash is pretty good.
Oh, so all these parks are land leases to the people that bring the home?
I own the land. I sold the homes back on owner finance notes, and then I charge lot rent. So I have no maintenance. So like, and a lot of them are.
How do you guys handle management on that stuff?
So there's a man. All of that's out towards like Stillwater. And there's a manager, the old sheriff in town. He was managing them for a guy. It's funny. So that guy that owned those actually one of them became a mentor of mine, and very, very successful in the oil business. And he's probably 79. I have lunch with him once a month. That's cool. He gives me a lot of advice, lawyers that I use, I've got from him, that kind of stuff. Just a really cool guy, still very active in business, still actively drilling. So he'll probably live to be 100, one of those guys.
You sure hope so.
Yeah. He actually told me one time, he was like, the deals will run out before the money does. So be okay
The
with saying
deals
no.
will run out before the money does.
I was going to see what your thought was on this.
That's interesting.
Because he told this to me last week. And he was like, or I'm sorry, I said that backwards. The cash will run out before the deals do.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's interesting, because he was saying, like, if you're more selective with really good deals, then it goes way further. And he actually was the first person who was like, be okay with losing money on a deal. He's like, if you can go put it somewhere else and multiply it faster. I was like, that's interesting too. Now this guy's worth a lot.
Different ways to look at it, man. Like in the early days, I couldn't stomach losing $1, and I wanted to make sure that we were right.
Yeah.
But when you start to have that kind of volume, there's another thing. If you're underwriting every deal and you're sure about it, the probability of you messing one up is so much smaller.
Yeah.
But if you choose to grow, you're going to have more people helping. Yep. You don't make every decision anymore.
Someone's going to miss something.
Mistakes are going to happen.
Yep.
But I mean, they happen with us. I don't know how many deals we lost money on, but we've lost money. Well, we bought a vacant lot up in Canyon Lake. We bought a ton of these things. We pay $5,000 or $10,000, and they'd be worth $50,000. We just marketed a ton of people. We buy them and resell them on the market immediately. Easy, simple licks. We ended up buying this one lot that was between two houses, and it was a drainage thing. It wasn't an easement drainage, like there wasn't an easement on it.
Yeah.
But there was a freaking like a drain pipe under the road right in front of it.
Okay.
And I don't know how our guy missed that.
Yeah.
We got lucky and sold it for break even to a neighbor.
Okay.
So they extended their yard. We didn't lose any money on it, no actual lost dollars, but if we break even on a deal, we call it a loss.
Yeah.
We've had some of them where we've bought in other cities, didn't look close enough. And I look at it and say, all right, what do we do? What's going on? We've got this thing listed on the market. We have cash in it. I'm just using an example of $100,000, and maybe it's listed for $130,000 or something. And we're not getting the number. We're not getting the offers. We know we're going to have to lower it. We know we might take a little loss.
Okay. We
We don't have 100,000 at risk. We might have 10 at risk if we lose 10.
Yep.
But when you're looking at our transactional volume, some years is $30-40 million.
Yeah.
So when I look at that, I say, who cares about $10,000? What I
Yep.
care about is getting the $90,000 back out,
Yep.
going to put it in a deal. Usually we'll double our money on a lot of these deals, or at least 50% margin.
Okay.
So we might lose 10 here, but I need to get that money back quickly.
Yeah.
Get it back working in another deal where I have a chance to make $100,000 or at least 50 on it.
Yeah.
The 10 doesn't matter that much. Now we start losing $10,000 on like multiple deals that I can count in a quarter. Like some of these processes messed up. We're going to look at that. I bet we lose money on a deal a quarter. But remember, I mentioned earlier, we've got about 150 properties in inventory right now.
Yeah.
If we lose,
those are amazing statistics. Yeah.
Huge. If we lose on a deal or two a quarter, $5,000 or $10,000,
part of it.
That's like a shrink budget at Walmart for theft. Like it doesn't matter.
Yeah. And you're right. I guess with scale comes, you can't control everything. So
you can't. Now, one of my partners is a CPA.
Okay.
And he's a very entrepreneurial person for a CPA.
Yeah.
But there's still radical differences in our personality.
Yeah.
Like if someone loses money on a deal, he's walking around the office hounding people like it's going to bother him. And then I come in and I remind him, hey, we got that money back, but we just bought this other one. It's a great deal. Remember why we're doing this?
Yeah.
We stop wasting time. And sometimes they'll say, well, what about if we can sell it on a note? And I'm like, we don't want the note. We want the cash because the cash is our resource.
Yeah.
So those are balances that business partners have. And that's how we together look at that topic.
Are you guys holding anything like, let's just say even single family, or is it just you're only holding larger assets? So
I don't want to fool with those anymore, man.
Yeah, I don't either.
You know what we do have? We still have about 15 mortgage notes on some lots, some mobile homes. There's a couple houses in there.
So right now, that's all I have right now. Everything else is it's flipping.
Turn that stuff into cash, man.
I like the velocity of it.
Long term, you don't want to fool with renting a house. It's a bunch of work. And so you're in a spot now where you can collect $10,000 from one tenant from a warehouse, or you can go collect 10 $1,000 checks from house tenants.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've already learned this lesson, I think.
Oh yeah, I learned earlier. I was like, I don't want to keep renting.
Right.
So yeah, we turn and burn, and then right now it's just pushing cash back into doing more deals. A
lot of people. So I've heard this early on. We've still always been very transactional. We've built a portfolio. We sold the houses, and we're doing more of that in the commercial now. But I heard guys say, "I wish I would have kept every deal. You're stupid for not doing it. Well, you're going to wish one day." And I'm like, "No, dude, I won't."
Yeah.
I have to pay my bills.
Yeah.
I need new cash to run a business. I got to pay taxes. That happens.
Yeah.
We have always weathered bad economic cycles because we've had cash and low basis on things.
Yeah.
So I don't know that I'll regret this, man. I might not be worth $200 million when I die, but we've had a great business. We made a great income. We've never had big risk or concern.
Yeah.
And when things have gone wrong, we figured out how to solve them because we're so strong.
Yeah.
So I don't know that I'll ever worry about, we should hold on to those.
Yeah. And you guys started this about 10 years ago?
Yeah.
How old were you when you started it?
So I'm 43, so I was 33.
33. Okay. Awesome. I always do that. Not as a comparison thing. I always like looking at where people were at certain ages. And
Man,
then,
what's fun is, how old are you right now?
I'm 30 right now.
Dude, I've been interviewing guys that are younger than me, more common than guys that are older than me.
Huh.
And it makes me feel good to hear like positive affirmation from you guys.
Yeah.
But when I really put it into perspective for you, it's going to change the way you look at it. I didn't start in this business till 3 years after where you're at now.
Yeah.
You're doing a lot of deals. You get your shit together. Like you're headed the right direction. When you're my age, you're going to laugh at what I've accomplished because you should be so much further off than I am.
Because I look at this operation, and this isn't just to pat you on the back, but I'm like, man, this thing, like with that amount of deals, I'm like that. I got to get better at delegating a lot of this stuff.
But
that's an amazing side of it.
You'll grow. You'll get better. You guys have accomplished a lot for just a couple of dudes. You'll be surprised where you go in 10 years. You really will.
Yeah, it'll be fun, man. Fun ride. And then and then stay in touch with everybody doing it too, and maybe start doing some bigger stuff.
The resources that I picked up from other people has been mostly intellectual resources.
Yeah.
Connecting is important, but getting your head in the right space means so much more. My brother-in-law just raised $250 million for a SPAC, a special acquisition company. The dude grew up in the projects in Panama.
Yeah.
He moved with my wife and his mom and
That's
stepdad
awesome.
here when they were like 10 years old. He got accepted into Harvard Business School.
Okay.
I mean,
wow.
So these are people that have come from absolutely nothing, but they're in my circle.
Yeah.
And we get to spend Thanksgiving and Christmas with these people.
Yeah.
And it challenges who you think you really are.
Yeah.
Because the moment I think I'm good and the moment I start feeling good about myself.
Yeah.
I read a press release you sent it to me 2 days ago.
Yeah.
They just closed on the $230 million raise.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my God, I have so far to go. Sheesh.
Yeah, there's a lot of money out there. Like that's one thing
They're thinking big. I think what I'm looking at more of, they're thinking big. They're doing really big things.
Yep.
And I remind myself, no matter how far I think I've come, oh my gosh, like like we said earlier, there's always going to be someone that's better than you.
Yeah.
So we look at that stuff and it really helps encourage us and drive us forward.
Oh yeah.
So that goes back to when you're talking about the relationships and who you know, those relationships affect you so much more than you could ever imagine. They really, a lot goes in here.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like right now I have like 1 or 2 guys that I can really talk to, but I'm actively seeking for someone. Like, I think if I could find a guy, that's been doing similar to what I'm doing, that's 35 to 40, that, has a couple $100 million under asset or just is turning a lot of stuff. I'm trying to find somebody kind of in that in between. It's interesting because you'll find a guy, and I think a lot of guys are really good at like saying their big deal, and then you're like,
when you talk to them and find out what's really happening, it's different.
Yeah.
I think finding those people that can help you get to a next level is important. But like when you and I talk, for example, I don't know that I'm any more sophisticated than you are when it comes to the industrial stuff. The curative stuff, I believe we're far ahead of everybody.
Absolutely.
But the concepts you understand and the direction you're taking on this, I don't know that I could teach you anything about industrial. Like you get it all. So probably in the management side, I might be able to help. But outside of that, dude, you know how to do these deals. At this point, it's how big do you want to get? How do you want to put that capital together? And what are you willing to put under your management? Because that can be a hassle.
Yeah. How's your experience been with managing industrial?
I hate managing, man. That's one of the reasons I liked industrial is because most of them, we have a couple modified gross leases. Yeah. But almost everything is triple net. Yeah. And I prefer that because I got one girl in my office that can look every month and say, are they, have they paid their quarterly payment on their taxes? Have they made their payments to us? Is their insurance up to date? Okay, put it away. Look back next month and just check. Oh, wait, this person only makes annual tax payments. Don't worry about them. She goes through a checklist, and that's what we deal with the property management. Yeah. That's it.
That's what I was going to say.
Anything more than that, dude, I ain't got the bandwidth for that. We bought some apartments one time. Oh, my gosh. It was only 52 units, and I hated every bit of that. And we got sued because someone said they slipped and fell. Like, how much worse could that be?
So I haven't looked at hardly any multifamily because of that. And I think multifamily trade is really high. There's guys out there that can borrow money cheaper and they can syndicate at really good terms. sometimes with no pref as well, and so it's like you're competing against guys like that.
You don't want that.
And they want to go manage 150 people. It just wasn't what I wanted to do.
You know what, though? The industrial you're looking at is a lot like what we're looking at. You're not in the institutional space, which 250,000 square foot of tilt wall per building.
Yep.
That's not what you're looking at. There's extreme competition for that. That trades at tiny multiples.
It does.
What you're looking at, though, there are people that have funds that are in this space, but it's not really a pilfered space like flex space or, storage or multifamily.
Yeah.
The dudes in this size industrial, like, I don't know, 50,000 square foot and below, it's a bunch of guys like us.
Yeah, no, it is. It's fun, though.
So you got a chance to actually get some really good footing and pick up some good ground in it.
Yeah.
Without being a big operation.
No, absolutely. And I think there's a lot of different small buildings as well that even with I did one. Have you rezoned anything into industrial or have a variance on anything?
I just had to sue the city of Universal City, because they took industrial, downzoned it to residential. It had a big metal building on it.
While you owned it?
No, while the prior owner owned it. He couldn't get tenants because he couldn't get COs.
Yeah.
He sold it to me for cheap. I went in and tried to rezone. They wouldn't let me. I tried to put a tenant and they wouldn't let me. So I sued them and then filed a new zoning application. While we're going through the lawsuit, I was actually approved for the highest use of industrial that exists in that jurisdiction.
Okay. Nice.
And then I'm deciding if I'm going to ask for damages or close the lawsuit. So sadly, I've gone from housing to high use industrial.
Yeah.
Why do you ask that?
I had a building that I found, and it was 30,000 square feet exactly on 7 acres, but it was a church. But I drove past it, and it was a red iron freestanding building. So it had a sanctuary in the front, but the front, essentially the front of its face, and then it had 2 wings that kind of came off that were offices down the sides of it. But then the gym was in the middle, and so I knew the church. This was actually a crazy story where I knew so much information. It was wild. So I probably need to be careful on what I share, but but I just started calling around and I was like, what's going on with this? And eventually I just got some information that I was like, okay, I'm going after this. And so I call the church that owns it, and they're like, hey, you have to come make your offer after our church service on Sunday at 1.
In person? To the board?
To the deacons.
Oh.
And so I show up, and there's 8 guys, and I swear I'm the shortest guy there. And they're all these big dudes, kind of bolos, starched jeans.
Were you a little intimidated?
And I was like, okay, there's no way I'm going to win a negotiation. So the lady was representing them. They had a realtor that was representing them. It's the only deal I've ever done industrial that had an agent involved, I think. And she's like, hey, these guys are really intimidating and all this, whatever. And they were wanting one. Originally it was, I think, 1.1 or 1.2, and I offered 410. And so
these guys are really intimidated about 400.
So I'm sitting in this room, and they're all standing up, and I'm like, dude, I'm the shortest guy in here.
They were planning to intimidate you.
I'm not sure. And when I walked in, I could tell by the service, I was like, I know where this is going. It was just a very I don't know. I'm not gonna say what domination, but I was just like, and so I make my offer, and the guy is like, well, what if someone offers 420? That's the only question they ask. Or just a really one-off question. I was like 410, and I was like, but I'll sign it today, I'll close it. But I need 120 days for the rezone, for the variance. So it was kind of really low offer.
Were they still using it at that point?
No, they had just built a new church.
Oh, and they were out of it.
So I'm in the new church with them.
Oh, okay, got it.
So I'm like, it's just empty. And they had 2 contracts bust on it where the guys just couldn't I don't know if they just couldn't ante up.
That's useful information.
Yeah. And I knew what they would take around.
How did you know that?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Chatter.
Well, yeah, I don't know if I want to say, but because it was somebody that I knew that I have a lot of respect for that knew them, and anyway,
that information happens. The smaller the town, the more the talk happens.
It does, and she presented it hey, this will actually help them. They need this money back from the church. It was paid off. I was like, okay, and so it's kind of an interesting thing because you're negotiating you're lowballing a church, and then you have a long
it's this big board of intimidating deacons.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and it's
but you
Sunday.
have information that you think's going to help.
Yeah, so he's like, well, what if someone offers 420? And I go, you should take it. Because I'm like, I'm not going to be able to negotiate against 9 guys.
Right.
And I was like, one of these guys, I know, one of them has to know how to negotiate. Just one of them. They all had businesses. She told me.
Yeah.
And so he was like, okay. And I was like, yeah, well, great. And I just kind of was trying to end it. I was like, well, great to see you guys. Shake everybody's hand. I was like, let me know. That was Sunday.
You were doing the takeaway close without knowing it.
No, I was like, I have to. I was like, the more questions they ask, I was like, I'm just going to I can't win 1 on 9. So So I was like, yeah, that'll be offer. And I was like, if you guys want to take it, I was like, just let me know this week. And I was like, good. I was like, I gotta run. Kind of shook everybody's hands. Looked him in the eye. Got out of there.
Tail between my legs. I'm out.
Oh yeah. And she was like, kind of like right behind me, like, let's go. And it was one of the only times I was negotiating where I was like, man, I'm kind of sweating.
Have you seen that show, Righteous Gemstones?
No. I don't really watch TV,
It's got the guy that did. I'm going blank. The guy that did Eastbound and Down.
Oh, Jerry Reed? Oh, the movie. Is there a movie?
Yeah, it was a series.
Was it Jerry Reed that did Eastbound and Down?
No, what's the guy's name? Dang it. Anyway, man, I wish you'd have saw this. They get this big mega church and they dress and act like this. Anyway,
it was like bolos and suits.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm going to get
I'm like
up.
picturing you being in the show.
I was wearing this exact outfit because I wear almost the same thing every day. And,
so what happened? Y'all
yeah. So he comes back Tuesday or Wednesday and they're like, hey, we're going to do your offer. Like, didn't counter. Like, sweet, let's sign up. So get the contract to them.
Well, you know what, though? They did that because they kind of tried to counter you a little bit to see. And you're like, then you should take it. They knew you weren't willing to budge. So it's either take or nothing.
That was the best, that was one of the, good things I did with the negotiating was when he said that, I was like, if I give any room here, I'm done.
Because they're going to keep pulling.
They'll keep pulling. So I was like, you should take it. And then he was like, well, we do have someone that's interested around 425. And I was like, yeah, I said, if they want to pay that, that's great. I was like, I said, I'll make it super simple. This was my highest and best. I don't want to play around with you guys. There's 9 people here. I was like, this could go for months, I think is what I said. I just kind of stopped. I was like, I don't want to justify why I'm at 410. I was like, I know I have to, it's a church. I have to take all the pews out, which we donated the pews to somebody or someone took them. And I was like, I got to tear the gym out. I've got to tear out. It was probably
you justified your price,
14,000 square feet of office, but I didn't say anything to them. Because I didn't want to start going through it.
Oh, you didn't justify it?
No,
you
I
said
didn't.
You should take
because I was like, man, there's so many variables here. I was like, and one of the guys had a well-known construction company. The other guy had an HVAC company I knew in town that's pretty large. I think he sold private equity. But I was like, I don't want to start line iteming my demo and repairs and all this because some of these guys may be like, it doesn't cost $150,000 to do that.
Right, they'll start arguing with you.
Yeah. So I was like, $410,000. Well, if someone offers, I was like, no. And then I said, no. That was it. So I said, no.
You know what I like what
really
you said about that, though, is sometimes folks will ask us all these weird questions. And specifically in the curative business, when someone says, well, I think the property's worth this much, I'm straight up. I say, you know what? You're right. I know we only offered you $20,000. That property is worth $250,000. In order to get to that, you got to round up your 7 siblings. You got to go do all this. You got to fix all those problems.
Yeah.
And if you do it, you do make all the money. Well, okay. Well, I had somebody call me last week, offer me 60, and I'm like, man, honestly, that's not a bad deal. If they'll pay you 60 for it as it is, you should probably take it.
Yeah.
And I find when you say that, people take you as a much more straight shooter.
Absolutely.
Because usually, then the other person, the deal maker starts to try to justify, well, you shouldn't take it because of this, and can they close, and start doing all this. Man, it ain't a bad deal. If you got that, man, I respect it. Take it.
Yeah.
They look at you as like, dude, he's a straight shooter.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I switch it to where I'll say, well, if I was you, I would take the 60 then. And then it holds your price where it's at. It ends your negotiation.
Putting it right out there to say, do you really have it or not? Because if you don't, you wouldn't be talking to me.
I would say probably. I don't know how much you would say, but probably 70% of the time they don't have another offer.
I agree with that. That's part of why I do it, because it allows me to corner them without making them look bad.
Yeah.
Well, I think you should take it. In their mind, they're thinking, fuck, I tried to play this game and I struck out.
Yep.
But they don't have to tell you that, but you kind of already know.
Yeah. I actually will go one step further sometimes with that, and I'll say, well, is it another investor? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, well, I know most every investor in town. Who is it? And I don't know if people love that, but sometimes they'll be like, oh, it's this guy. And I'm like, yeah, he's good to buy that. And then if they're like, oh, it's this guy, I'm like, well, I've never heard of him. And I was like, and I know most of the guys. And so, if you kind of think he's being shady or something, let me know and I can help you write the contract. And I say that just to see if they'll be like, okay, well, where are you at? Because then it sounds bad, but it kind of almost puts you in like an expert position to them. Yeah. And then you're offering help and they're like, well, he's not even getting anything for offering the help. And I've actually only had one lady call me and she was like, hey, I did have it. And she was an old lady. And I was like, I'll help you with this. And I called the guy. I was like, do you have a contract? And he was like,
you know what, though? That means you're being an all right guy. And at the end of the day, every deal ain't for me. Every deal ain't for you.
Yeah.
That's okay. It doesn't hurt to do this a little bit.
Yeah.
It's fine. But I think it's a more mature, more wise position. When you would talk to a fresh deal maker who's 6 months into his business, he needs every deal. He's dying for it.
Yeah.
And that's how he's going to behave. Not many people are going to behave the way you are unless they're much more mature. So I think that does a lot to show who you are.
Yeah. I think desperate buying is one of the worst spots. like to be in. Like when I had, 2.5 years ago or so, I made some bad decisions on the trash business and got in a little bit of a cash crunch. I remember being like, man, maybe I should just wholesale one or two like houses or something. And I remember being like, why can't I'm like, I'm really good at converting to contract, or like getting from like short amount of conversations from a seller to getting them to sign a contract. And I was like out of my rhythm, and I was like, man, I've been calling these people like I'm 2 months in. I was like, I'm trying way too hard. Like I'm not helping because I needed it. And I think that's like, I mean,
they can smell it on you.
Oh yeah.
It's like a desperate dude. The women can smell it.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a lot of, not in a bad way, there's a lot of young guys, 20 to 22 years old that are trying to like wholesale and stuff right now. And I'm like, they're like, man, it's just so hard. And I'm like, probably doing what I was doing. Like 20, you got
commission breath and they can all smell it.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. So, but yeah, that church deal, that was a wild deal. So, and then we had a whole community came together protesting against us. Met the community, got it rezoned. Yeah.
So when you're in front of this entire community, that was an online chat though, right?
So no, I went and met everybody in person.
But you identified as an online chat and you started communicating in that chat.
Yeah.
Were you getting attacked then, or were people accepting you okay?
What's funny is there was actually a lady that was like, I would say just respected in the community. And she just called me. And I don't know how she got my number. I was actually kind of impressed. But she called me and she's like, hey, I know this guy's just bashing you on Facebook. And I was like, yeah. And I was like, I don't know this guy. Like, I've never talked to this guy. And she was like, okay, well, that's what I was going to ask. She's like, I actually live next to the building. Like, she was like one of the houses that was on the backside of it. But you can't really see it. But, and she's like, well, everyone's just thinking you're putting a trash company in here. And I was like, I'm not putting my trash company. I was like, actually, I'm under contract to sell my trash company. And she's like, okay. And I was like, yeah. And I was like, would you mind sending me his number? And then that's when I called him. And I essentially was like, hey, man, I said, I just wanted to see, what the issue was.
Was he a little shaken up?
He actually was like a little.
He's like, Mr. Tough Bad MF on the internet. When you call him and be a nice guy, he's probably shaken up.
He was calling himself like the mayor.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah. Anyway, it ends up being a really nice guy. But I call him and I'm like, hey, what's the deal here? I'm like, I've never talked to you. And I was pretty blunt. And he was like, yeah, man. And I was like, hey, half those entities you listed on here weren't even my entities. Like, I don't even know whose those are. I was like, so you've got other people's information on this post as well. I was like, I would just ask you to take it down. He was like, hey, man, no big deal. Like, she just called me and said you weren't putting a trash company in here.
Isn't it funny how he was so tough on the internet and you call him be a polite guy?
There was 4 posts. I mean, just blasted. Like, and he was comparing it to a private equity group bought a mall, and it was all, that's why he had the story all wrong. But he was saying I was going to go take debt against the property and then just use it for something else and leave the property to rot.
No one does that. That's not even a thing.
No, it's not. And I actually was like, well, I've never known anybody to do that. And he's like, well, that happened on this. I was like, no, it didn't. I know that guy too. So anyway, found out he had the foundation company. We go to the meeting. Everything smooths over. He's the only one I was worried that would turn up to the actual city of Tulsa meeting. So I had him go do a crawl space repair on a house. And then I had him do it the day of the rezoning meeting.
Excuse me, sir. I want to do the job with you, but only at Thursday at 6 p.m. The only time you can do it.
Well, and I actually thought about it 2 different ways. So I was like, if he says no to that scheduling,
then you know what's up.
I know he's coming.
Oh yeah.
So I was like, and he actually, it was a good quote. I've used them on more houses. It was actually pretty competitive with our guys, which is pretty rare, I feel like, right now. And he did a great job. And then he didn't fight the time like that I requested. So I was like, I don't think he's showing up.
Nice.
Walked right in. The city knew that the church. They said, we would love for you. Like, they looked at the site plan. They're like, we would love for you to do this project. Everyone was up there for like 10 to 15 minutes kind of fighting their case or whatever. I was up there for like 30, 45 seconds.
Wow.
Yeah, they were like, we know, we've already looked at this. You're good to go. And that was it. So got it wrapped up. Bought it for $410, put $82,000, I think, maybe $85,000 of work into it.
$500, little carrying costs.
Yeah, appraised at 1 point. I think it was 1.29.
Wait, how many square feet was this thing again?
30,000.
Okay.
Yeah, so ripped the basketball court out, ripped all that out, put garage doors down the side. Actually tore into the offices, and then put recessed garage doors with like overhangs.
Oh, okay.
And then.
Would you say you're getting a rent on that like $12,000?
A little over $12,000.
That's $145,000. Call it $140,000 a year off of $600,000. You got yourself a 18, 20 plus return.
Yeah, yeah, and really, if it's if you can get a.
How long was the lease they signed?
It is a 3 or 5. I think they're 3.
I'll tell you what, though, if that's the biggest building around that area and it's set up and works for them, if they don't go out of business, they ain't going nowhere.
No,
they can't rebuild that for anywhere near what it costs them a month to lease from you.
Not at all.
So they got no incentive to leave.
Yeah, and the 4 acres next to it, which was just grass, they're graveling the 4 acres, and then they added a second entrance, and they're adding high fence all the way around it. So I don't know how much that would be for gravel.
They're paying for that stuff?
They are.
Dude.
Yeah.
The odds are they're going to be re-upping that lease.
Yeah, I think so.
Nice.
It's actually it's a guy that I knew. He was in oil field as well. He's putting pumps out there. And I think they've already got trucks running and pumps ordered. So
now, remind me, how did you finance this one?
This was just regular bank financing. Now this is on a 25-year AM. It was 80%.
Oh, the bank, the 25-year AM, but 5-year balloon.
I don't think there's a balloon on this one.
Dude, your bank gave you 25 on that? Wow.
I could be wrong on that. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it was 20% down.
Your debt service on interest rates were a lot lower back then.
So that one actually we locked in early at 6.92.
Okay. So you probably on a $500,000 note, you got what, 150 in it, and then the 350 or so is debt.
Still on interest only right now.
Your payments are what, like $3,000 a month?
They're pretty low. And then
you can get an insurance company to do a 30-year with those low interest rates. I don't know if they'll take that small.
Yeah. Oh, you're saying from a lending perspective?
Dude. Yeah. Or those returns. Honestly, in that case, it depending on my decision on that would be, how's my cash position look in the moment?
Yeah.
Because you're going to get a good return putting your cash in it. Or if you leverage it, the debt service is so low, it doesn't move the needle that much. So I don't know, man.
Yeah.
I guess it depends on what your business looks like in that time.
Yeah, because I don't know. I think some guys would say refi it. I think some guys would just say let it cash flow. It just
some people would say
your...
pull a bunch of cash out of it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
So I'm in the.
What would you do?
Well, I'm in the middle of running an exercise right now because I want to understand what the net difference is, the net effect on cash. So the different scenarios we're running is scenario one. Let's say you have, just use a number, $1 million in income at this tax bracket. What's the result? Like, how much do you have after you pay the taxes? How much you got? That's scenario one.
Yeah.
Scenario two is you take that $1 million and invest it with some debt in an industrial deal that might be getting a 12 cap or 15 cap. You take your depreciation, you take your depreciation recapture, you take all of your cash flow, minus your debt service. What is the net there? That way it's the absolute net effect of that asset after depreciation and income and everything. Then you do it one scenario with leverage, one scenario without leverage. So you can look at all these. And then another one would be, and it's on a 5-year term too, each scenario.
Okay.
And then another term, one of the scenarios would be just let that cash sit after paying the taxes. The other one would be put it in blue chip stocks that probably go up 7 to 8% a year. That's standard. Yep. Run that over a 5-year term. What's that look like? Now step back and ask, for every $1, how does it perform in each of those situations?
Yeah, that's a great model.
That'll help me understand like what is really the best answer, because sometimes when you run all the way through that, sometimes things look different. Like you don't really realize I ran a big model about 2 years ago, and I realized how bad vacancy affects industrial much more than I realized. Yeah. Take you a year to get a tenant. So other than the vacancy of the loss of income, you now have your carrying costs that a tenant's normally paying. Yep. You're paying that and you're not getting rent. Dude, a year of vacancy every 5 years is horrific on your yield.
Absolutely.
So I used to look at landlords who would give all these concessions and say how stupid they were. Go for top rent. Yeah. Now I realize if you can avoid a year of vacancy every 5, dude, that's 20%.
Oh,
that changes the game.
Well, you look at a lot of those older guys and they have below market rents. You're like, man, this guy could make so much more money, but he's like, I've been in there for 23 years.
Right.
And he's like, I don't know anything on it anymore. And, it's like, it's kind of the hard thing. Like a lot of people are,
they spent no money on make-readies. Oh, no. You know what else? It was shocking to me when I really looked at it. After I'd already bought a bunch of buildings myself, I'd never run this. Yeah. You're going to pay a broker to put a tenant in there a lot of times. You're going to pay for all the bills while a tenant's not paying it. Your utilities, you're going to have to give them some tenant improvement budget sometimes. Yeah. You add all that up, holy shit.
Yeah. Yeah, and we self-leased everything except for one, a broker bought it too, but I would just list everything on my own.
What services do you list it on?
LoopNet, Crusty, Facebook. Anything smaller buildings, Facebook gets a lot a lot of kicks. Now you may have a little bit harder time on financials from your tenant base coming from Facebook, but if a broker brought somebody, like I had the 8,900 square foot building in Broken Arrow, broker brought a guy to while I was under contract. So that's the other thing I do is while it's under contract, I'll shop at the brokers and be like, hey, I'm buying this.
Mm-hmm.
If you bring somebody, we'll give you 3%. So he signed a 5-year with increases, and then they moved in. So 2 or maybe 3 of the buildings have had tenants move in day of close.
Nice. Boy, those little things along the way, people don't realize how big of a difference that makes.
Yeah.
There are times now where I look at buildings and say, I might not get as big of a discount on one, but if it doesn't need all the repairs and I can get a tenant in it while it's under contract or get one signed up close, you start to remove carrying costs. I'm going to use a broker usually, but you start to add up all those compounding costs and you say, whoa, man, I need to lower the price, get a better deal and get this tenant in quick.
Yeah.
Like right around the time I'm closed, it makes a big difference.
Well, in that model that you were just talking about as well, because you move a lot more cash than I do currently. Have you, like, as far as the unlevered versus levered in that model, have you dove into that? Because I always thought
I've already run that one separately outside.
Okay, you have.
But I haven't run it with the net effect of the depreciation and the depreciation recapture.
Right.
Part of why I'm trying to figure that out is where do I want to see these assets? Like, I've pulled more cash out of our companies in the last few years to put on my personal financials so that my personal financials are looking stronger and stronger. But that means there is some cash just sitting, not doing anything. And I'm okay with that somewhat.
Yeah.
But I also ask myself, what's my opportunity cost? How much am I actually losing by not deploying some of it? So I'm trying to figure out if I should balance some of it that way.
Yeah.
But I did run the model levered versus unlevered. And man, I can't really come up with a real justification to do unlevered because the leverage makes such a big difference.
Yeah.
But I won't go mega. Like the most we'll do is 2/3 debt, 1/3 equity. Okay. But sometimes I'll go 50-50.
Oh, okay, cool.
So the leverage really does juice the return.
Yeah.
But I also care about the protection. Like if something goes wrong, can I service this debt on my own for a while? What do I have to do? Can I just throw a shitbag tenant in there that's immediate and covered if I had financial problems in my business? Like, how do I manage my risk down with the debt?
Yeah. Are you guys charging interest back on your money, or is it just a pref?
Well, all those deals are internally owned. So there's only one deal that I've raised. Yeah. Okay. And that was raised with just personal friends.
Yeah.
And the way I did that is I just told them, guys, I'm going to give y'all, I basically we ran a model, but we targeted them at about a 12 to 14% return, more or less.
Okay.
And that's with a sale in 5 years.
Cash on cash or IRR?
That was IRR.
IRR, yeah.
So they were kind of like, well, we'd like a shot at some of the upside if you hit a home run. I said, all right, fine. Once we went over a certain threshold, then they would get like 70-30. They'd get 30%, we'd get 70%.
Just as a waterfall?
Yeah. If we hit a certain bogey.
Yeah. I've seen some guys do that kind of pretty much.
But see, here's the deal though. I was matching the deal with the capital because those guys didn't have access to Whopper great deals anyway. And they were going to end up putting in their bank at a 4% return or go to an apartment syndicator that was going to give them like 10. So I'm like, you know what? I'll do better than them.
Yeah. Yeah. I've thought about that. If you had an investor come in or if you put it in where you is if you had 500 and let's say you had 500, they have 500, right? And you're like, hey, we're doing a raise for 500. I thought about it to where it's like, hey, could you put in their 500, take your 500, put in it at a 4.75, 5.2, they're at 8% if they had interest on the deal. So you're paying 3% interest on their money borrowed. But the other thing is the opportunity cost of your money being tied up with interest paid. Can you go make 16 to 20% and putting in other deals? And then it just doesn't even matter.
So there's all these different things you look at. You say, where do I want to allocate my funds as my personal financial grows?
Yeah.
Where am I putting my work hours? And usually wherever you're putting your work hours, the most amount of capital you can put there, you're usually going to get the biggest returns because returns on your time and your effort and your intelligence, basically.
Yeah.
So what I'm doing day to day, can that take any more capital?
Gotcha.
And then the other thing is, what do I want this total thing to look like? Like I want big returns here, medium here, but I still need some cash. How do I balance my own PFS, basically?
Yeah. No, that was just me. That was just me asking you personally as we scale. Because I was like, how have you navigated those?
Frankly, I didn't even look at what my personal financial looked like for the first 8 years. I've been looking at that for the last 24 months.
For banking on the larger stuff?
Yeah, I'd keep a couple $100,000 in my own personal account, and everything was in the business. And if we had any cash, which we usually kept fair amounts of it, it was all in the partnerships.
Right.
So the problem is when I turned in my personal financial to a bank, They look at our business financials,
Yeah.
and then mine would have a ton of equity and not much cash.
Yeah.
But the partnerships
That's
would have a
most
lot
people.
of cash, but they didn't like to look at that as much liquidity
Right.
because you have to have a vote to get cash out of those.
Yeah.
And partnerships could need the cash, and that cash can go get used real quick.
Absolutely.
So about 2 years ago, I remember thinking, my business partner had a family member die, his wife. And I remember thinking, what if my business partner came in next week and said, guys, I decided I'm going to go retire and travel.
Yeah.
Or what if he decided he didn't want to work hard anymore? And I thought, am I able to take on all of our credit lines?
Yep.
What if he wanted to be signed off of our debt? Could I cover that? And at that time, no. The answer was no. So then I thought, my entire business is at risk.
Mm-hmm.
So I spent about a 24-month period changing some of the things I did, pulling cash out of companies, letting the guys use credit lines more and less of our cash, and cleaning up my personal financial to where I now, and then I represented it to our lenders and said, if he decided to go to Mexico and wanted off, they said, yes, we would let you take that place independently now.
Gotcha.
So that was a business decision.
Yeah, no, that's smart. I
didn't even look at that point. I didn't even look at what's my opportunity cost of the cash. It's the opportunity cost is my business closing.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So that was all that mattered. Now that I've gotten that, I say, okay, now I'm going through this exercise of what do I do with excess cash above that because I've built that to where it needs to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I haven't leveraged any kind of line of credits yet, and I've had a few banks ask about it, but I haven't figured out what would be the best placement for that. So,
dude, the curative work is the best place in our mind.
Yeah,
because you can get debt for those warehouses anyway all day long.
Yeah,
but the only way you can do the curative stuff is with cash, because lenders will never lend on it.
Yeah.
So when you use a credit line, it's not collateralized, unsecured, and you're personally guaranteeing it.
Gotcha.
So we'll use, like, for example, one of the companies has about $2 million in equity and an $800,000 credit line. So they have about $2.8 million worth of like ability, buying power.
Right.
But that $800,000, I don't want them using that first. I want them to use their equity. And when they start to get filled out on their equity, they got 800 left. So at that point, we're like, all right, dude, you need to start moving your inventory right now.
Yeah.
And you got 800 left. You can still do some deals, but you need to be judicious. I don't like you paying distributions and monthly expenses out of credit lines. So get to work.
Yeah, that part scares me. Like when I hear people do that.
Yeah, I don't. Now, if it's in a short amount of time, and let's say, like, for example, that specific company we're talking about has about $700,000 worth of inventory on the market right now. It's a bunch of mid-sized deals.
Yeah.
But they'll turn pretty quickly. But I remember sitting down having this meeting saying, if you dump all this, you'll pay half your credit line down. You've got some money for distributions. You can pay your quarterly tax payment and have a couple bucks in the bank.
Yeah.
All right, let's get moving through that. And you have another wave of inventory that should be coming. So we plan it out over about a 60, 90-day period.
Yeah.
To where credit line will be satisfied, have another 500, 600, 700,000 back in the cash account.
Yeah.
And then you'll still have 700 or 800,000 worth of like availability. And that's just all in an entity that's just turning inventory. That's not long game stuff.
Yeah. That's a lot of value. I hope everyone listens to that part of it because I feel like that's what most people on podcasts won't talk about. And that's one thing I told Sarah is I was like, I've started to do some more podcasts and I'm like, I'm just going to tell everybody everything I know. And I'm like,
I do it.
I'm like, if people don't like it, I don't care. I'm like, but like if I go meet with somebody, over coffee, which I don't do a whole lot of coffee or lunch meetings, I try not to. But if I do and they ask me and I'll tell them, I've had several guys recently when they're like, dude, just no one ever said that. I'm like, I don't know why. Like, I'm not trying to play the
they're
like,
not being transparent.
Yeah, like they've asked other people, and it's like, well, they're not sharing all the information. And a lot of guys, it's like, well, I don't want to create competition. I'm like, I want to create everyone to be super wealthy, and then they call me, we do deals together. Like, I'm like, I'd rather show somebody how to do it.
Hold on. Here's the way I look at that.
All right.
Somebody says, I don't want to create competition. Do you think you're so big and so good and so smart that by you telling somebody in a meeting a little nugget that it's going to change your business and your life? Get over yourself.
Yeah. Well,
you're not fucking Warren Buffett, dude. And neither am you.
Yeah.
Like, open it up, build some relationships, get smart.
Yeah. It's like, why not help somebody if you can lend a hand? And the
thing
is
stuff that I did is we learned some curative title on our own. Outside of this, I learned this from other people.
Well, and it's like you say, is it your brother-in-law that did the $250 million raise?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, you're going to tell me you're worried about a $30,000 deal or
come on,
or something like that, not sharing information that someone can go that you would rather do that deal. But there's guys out here that are moving $250 million. There's so much money out there. It's like
scratching the surface.
You can't control that.
One of my partners, the CPA, early on, as I started talking about this stuff, curative title is basically unknown. No one really does it. Some do, but not much.
I only knew it from you and Caden Pinnock. That was the only other guy that I knew that was kind of in that space. But
the only people that I knew do it were me, Carl out of North Carolina, and Tim Bender.
Yeah.
Other than those three, I don't know anybody that really did this as their business.
Yeah.
And I got to talking about it in the social media, and my business partner was like, Logan, you're going to create competition. Don't tell people. Keep it a secret, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. But now everybody calls you to JV.
Dude, we did last year. I actually don't even know. I have to look at our financials. I looked at a report right now, though.
Yeah.
Excluding the inventory that I told you about earlier, we have 62 deals right now in our pipeline that are JV deals with other people that are curative deals.
That's awesome.
And that's because I got on here, started talking about it, and people trust us. They think we know what we're doing, and they want to work with us. And we'll help with the capital.
Are those all in Texas or are those everywhere?
That specific one, that JV partner is all in Texas.
Oh, that's one partner with 62
that's
deals?
That's one person that's got a bunch of them, yeah.
Holy
he went through our
smokes.
coaching program and was just an outlier.
Yeah.
And he said, I want to do the acquisition, and I'm going to let you guys use the capital, and you do the disposition part.
That's great.
So we strategized together on the solve. He doesn't have to use any capital. So he built an acquisition arm, and he gets 50% of the profit for being a front-end buyer.
Yeah.
We have to use the capital and help with the solve and go sell it. So we actually do a little bit more than 50% of the work, but we're set up to where we can facilitate it well. Yeah. I'll tell you, though, we're starting to get a lot of deals. You just closed one in Georgia. We got one in North Carolina. The probate alternative states, like California and Florida, you have to go through probate. Yeah. I like one with affidavit of heirships or small state affidavits. Yeah. We're working some of those through referrals now. Okay. That's awesome. Yeah, because if you think about that, you went from, okay, I'm going to share what I know. You went from a podcast to a group to a guy that now is doing 60 deals with you. Even if it was just that one guy, it was worth setting up the podcast. Dude. Or if, I don't know where he found it from the podcast or you speaking. Like, I didn't even know who you were when I came to the first one. And then I just caught you in the lobby. I was like, hey, good to meet you. I think I said I do industrial or something. Yeah. Like trying to catch you on a flyby. Yeah. And then you're like, cool. And I was like, I like this. I'm sorry, dude. I really, that bothers me that.
Oh, no, not at all. It wasn't a bad thing. No, there was a.
But like, you come from Oklahoma to Dallas and I like can't spend time to talk, but.
Oh, no, I didn't mean that a bad way. I was like, I'll just hit him up on Instagram. I'm like, there's 200, well, there was like, what, 250 people there or something? Mm-hmm. And then I started to add up in my head. I'm like, wait, what did he charge for this? I was like, yeah, I made a lot of money this next day. I was like, this is good. That's awesome. But there's a lot of value there.
There is. You know, the first couple of events, I obviously wanted to make money, but I was trying to figure out what's the price point that makes sense. Yeah. That's not too expensive. But the other part of that is I've got to figure out how to give enough in that day that someone walks away and says, that was a fair deal. Because the last thing I want is people on the internet saying, rip off, bogus, don't do it.
And they'll do it.
That's right. Yeah. So that forced us to work really hard to make sure to give enough. And thank God we did. Yeah. Because I have a lot of people that have positive feedback. So, okay, all right. They're not going to rip me off out there. Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome, man. And then you grew your social from, and you can pivot if you need to, but you grew your social from what, like a few thousand followers to 100,000 in a year? What was the timeline there? About a year. Okay. I wanted to ask you about that. I was like, that's impressive. You know, yeah, it was a lot of work, actually. Well, I'm just thinking through this whole process. And in 2017 or 18, I opened up a Facebook account. And me and my wife were buying houses on the east side and taking pictures and talking about it. Yeah. And wholesalers would find us and realtors, and we do deals that way. And I remember thinking, wow, if I can make a Facebook platform big or Instagram, we can do more of this. Yeah. And at the time I opened up an Instagram page, and man, for like a year, we were just filming random short videos and putting it out there, and not that many people were watching them. Yeah. And I got a couple thousand followers, not that much. But I remember thinking, I have to sit down and figure this out myself. I need to look at all the content out there. I need to figure out what content works and not just gets views, but converts people into followers. Yeah. And then converts sales or JV referrals. And that took 3 or 4 months of watching these videos, making videos, testing them. And I would, every once in a while, a video would hit, and you can see in there how many people followed you from that video. So you'd see, 200 people followed me from this video. Oh, that worked. Yeah. Well, finally, we hit this point where we're doing these property tours where you go walk around the property, use a wide angle lens. Yeah. And I start out with some kind of gregarious hook, and then I talk about what was the linchpin of that deal, how much money we made, and at the end I say, my name's Logan Fullmer, follow me for distressed real estate. Yeah. And I would do like 30 or 40 of those over a 2-day period, and then we release one a day. Gotcha. And I started to see those views would be like 5,000, 10,000, 20,000, 50,000. Regularly, they would get over 20,000 views.
Yeah.
And then every so often, one of them would pop and I'd
Jump.
get 5,000 followers. Dude, I got one that was like 20,000 followers from a reel.
Dang.
So what I've found is of the 100,000 followers, about 90,000 of them came from less than 10 reels.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, because some of you were taking heat on. Like, I would go through comments. I'm like, this dude's getting grilled. Like, I'm like,
I know.
I mean, he just keeps posting. He just keeps posting.
Keep going.
I was like, see, if he starts doing reply videos, I'm like, this is gonna be awesome.
Well, it was really an interesting balance to see what gets people involved, what converts people into a connection, and then the other thing is I realized there's a lot of videos in the middle that don't convert people a lot, but they still get a lot of views. And you can see what percentage of them are non-followers to followers that view those.
Yeah.
And I realized there's a lot of useful information in these posts that don't convert, but they're getting fun information to people and continuing the connection, even if they don't convert. So there's very useful thing in between those big converting ones.
Yeah.
So
awesome.
Frankly, it was a lot of work, but we found there was a formula that worked. And I noticed other people, when I look at their content creators, I can see they've kind of found a formula and they continue to follow it.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, I mean, it took months and months and months of me like putting all my time into figuring this out. It's
kind of like what we were talking about when we walked in here with Hormozy, just a volume. Like, they've just been doing volume for 10 years.
What I go back to him though, that dude is incredibly bright and incredibly driven.
Yeah.
So like what I would say is what I've done is a fraction of that because I think he's brighter than I am. I think he's more driven than me.
Yeah.
But it's, that's what I've gotten out of it relative to what he's gotten out of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And then that's turned into, but the amount of money you've made off that. I mean,
yeah.
That's awesome.
Nowadays I could easily
just doing deals.
So I'm looking at an insurance policy for my social media profiles because the amount of revenue, millions of dollars a year come from those now.
Yeah.
And if something were to happen with one of them,
it cuts the pipeline.
Dude, significantly. So I'm getting quotes for that right now to try to figure out how the insurance companies deal with it.
That's wild.
I know.
That should be the caption of this video.
I mean,
I'm now insuring my Instagram.
I'm not Kim Kardashian or I'm not Mr. Beast.
Yeah.
But when you look at, millions of dollars a year come from it, I think, well, I'd like to be protected somehow.
Absolutely. Yeah. Wow.
All right. Got a couple of questions.
All right.
Some of these are my favorite, actually. So I want to summarize some of the stuff we talked about. The reason I wanted to talk with you about industrial is a lot of people want to hear about it, even though we're talking about messy stuff through distress. And I want people to understand the better they get at spotting distress, managing distress, and working through it, the better they're going to be as an operator. And we buy a lot of inventory like that. But the commercial that you're dealing with, even though it might not be in foreclosure, even though it might not have tax liens against it, this stuff categorizes in the commercial real estate world as distress.
Yeah, absolutely.
You put significant repairs into like the church there. They've been vacant. I mean, that's distressed real estate in the commercial world. And if a bank owned one of those, that would be really distressed because bankers are like handicapped with what they can do. So I'm hoping that it opens people's eyes up as to the definition of distress might be wider than what they originally think it was.
Yeah.
But this goes outside of that a little bit. What does Jake today tell the Jake from 5 years ago?
Oh, man. I think that one was on the email. And
I'm glad we got to talk about where you've come in 5 years and 3.
Yeah.
Because now you got to go back. Where were you 5 years ago? Exactly. Tell me.
So I think you can sum it up pretty easy with, I think this is probably a lot of guys probably in their 20s as well, is you can look at a business, but if you don't know the time value to the money, then you can just spin your wheels for no reason. So example, when I did that first deal on that house, I put more in my pocket than the year before of the trash company off the one deal. But if you look at the hours involved with it, it was probably, I mean, I've spent a lot of time on that first. It was probably like 18 or 19 hours. Now, if I buy a house, I see it when I buy it. I never see it again. So Devin handles all of the construction, and then it's, hey, let's put this either on market or go sell it. And we'll do a lot of like trash cleanouts and stuff like that, where just turn around and you're marketing it as an investor special. They're quicker velocity.
Gotcha. Yeah.
I think a lot of guys early on get really excited about service businesses and that type of stuff, and that's great. You can also, they're also more risky, and also it's all your time. You live in it.
You do.
like I texted Devin yesterday and I was like, hey, thanks for handling everything while I'm gone so I can do this. Right. So like that's just a small lesson. But I couldn't travel at all when I had the trash business. I was running a truck with the guys,
You're
you know,
tired.
and then taking calls as we're going. I used to come back I worked in Southwest Kansas a bunch. I had an office up in Garden City. I would drive overnight. I would hop in the truck in the morning and then I would run routes and then I would sit down. I would do like 12 to 3:30 oil field designs. And then I would go pick up containers after that. But then I had a field behind a house that I would like storing everything at the time. So I'd have everything done at sunset. And then that's when I would go check on the properties we were starting to flip.
That's a full day.
Yeah. And that was with a lot of times driving through the nights. I would leave out Sunday at like 1 or 2. And then we were, the whole thing was going. But if something went wrong and I was in East Texas or Midland or something, I'm trying to like scramble. Like we had one where, truck got kind of an accident or container bounced or something like that. I can't remember what it was. And I'm like troubleshooting a well that's going wrong and it's all at the same time. And then I had a contractor call and was like, hey, someone broke into the house and stripped the electric. It was all in the same day.
Whew. So over this time,
that was
your stress, it's okay. Your stress load's gone down, your income has gone up, and your management's gotten smarter.
Yeah. Yeah. And I had a lot of it delegated to VAs. And then like, it's funny how you learn those little lessons, like where you're like, okay, we actually don't even need that. Well, now I'm paying for somebody for something that I thought I needed because everyone else was doing it that I don't need.
Done. Yeah.
Yeah. And I would say this is the most simple the business has been yet. And that's why I think we're in a good position to scale. It's just, I wanted clarity of where it was going.
You've got the institutional knowledge at this point. The next question is, how do I grow this business? But you understand the business and the operations. You've done that part.
Yeah.
Now
I'm actually seeking rock stars like right now.
Really?
Like we've interviewed a few guys recently. We actually thought about doing project management, but then Devin was like, man, I can do this like a few hours a week and let that way. He just got it so systemized.
Yeah.
But honestly, I'm kind of looking for a guy like more so probably acquisitions.
Good. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah. And then because Devin was
that's probably where you spend more time of all things is acquisitions.
And then I just meet with a lot of people, like whether it would just be phone calls or whatnot, that I really try and figure out who owns a lot of stuff. I like knowing news before everyone else does.
Yeah.
So
get you smart.
Yeah.
Get you know how to negotiate that church deal better.
Yeah. Yeah. Just with the city and big investors. I mean, if you look at a guy 65, 70 years old that owns really high end stuff all over town, it's like, all right, just a good guy to know.
You're right. Jake, there are newbies out there that are looking to get into this business, and you've picked up a lot in the last 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
What do you tell those newbies that are looking, saying, I want to be in that? What's your message to them?
This is just from my personal perspective. If you're just trying to get into it, are you talking about from investment or wholesale? Or like, what do you just in real estate and all?
The person over there that's working as a salesperson in the oil field, and they're like, well, Jake, I want to do it. What do you tell them?
Yeah. There's quite a bit of calls I get from guys that still work in oil field that were like, hey, I'd love to make an extra, it could be $50,000 a year. Seems like guys are like, they always say 30 or 50 grand. And it's like that their money on toys most of the time. And they're like, if I could just have some savings. But honestly, one of the biggest things is like, I've got 1 or 2 younger guys right now that they'll call me, like they'll go find a deal. And I'm like, they have time, like, first of all. And there's a lot of guys, it's weird. They're not working like a ton of like hour jobs that are in their young 20s. They're like all trying to do this entrepreneur thing. I think because social has that kind of following. So they all don't necessarily have a ton of money yet. And they're just trying to lock a first deal. But I'm like, I offer this all the time. I'm like, if you find a deal and you think it's a good deal, call me and I'll tell you if it's a good deal or not. Or I'll even go look at it sometimes with them. Like if it's close by, or I'll go out of my way sometimes. But I don't have great advice on that. I just think a lot of guys jump into deals with a hard money lender early on that don't know more than one exit. Maybe that'd be a good one, is have 2 to 3 possible exits on your first deal. Like make sure it's hey, if my planned exit as a flip doesn't work, it's still even just cash flow as a rental. Because a lot of the guys that do their first deal, they have hard money in place. They may not even be able to refi out of that hard money depending on their income.
I've seen that.
Yeah. So like if it's a flip only, you're sitting there going,
you got one shot.
Yeah. And they're like, hey, this was a 6-month fix and flip loan. Now you're paying, to extend or something like that. Or you're having to offload it to somebody for the same amount just to get your payoff back with your fees in place. So,
learning a bunch of exit strategies can help protect you.
Yeah.
I like it.
Is that what you would say? That was a hard question, actually.
Something that I noticed that's a big theme with you is the relationships, the networks.
Yeah.
getting out and getting to know a lot of people and learning. I would say out of your message I've heard, you've probably learned you're bright, but you've learned a lot from people along the way that's helped you connect those dots.
Oh,
So
it's all
that's
from other
something
people.
I think people can really get out of that.
Well, it's like I don't really read. Like
Really? You get
that-
it direct from people.
That's bad, but I don't know if I've ever. This sounds horrible. I don't know if I've ever read a whole book all the way through. But I know who to call. If so that's just what I wanted. I wanted experience. I didn't want a book. I can't call a book. That was my opinion on it. But
Yeah, I struggle with reading too. I get that.
yeah,
I'd rather talk to someone, connect with them, learn some stuff, maybe have a good conversation.
yeah. Now, if it's someone like you, like that, I'd consider just like an elite investor and what you have going on. Like I'm going to do research before I call you.
Oh,
And I think that's where a lot of young guys mess up is like they
Sound
don't do
idiot.
any research. I'm like, dude, you could have chat GPT that's probably had this done in 30 seconds. Why am I
Yeah,
on the
that's
phone?
true.
Why am I on the phone? That sounds really bad. I'm glad to answer the phone. But like if I'm going to call somebody that I think is better at it, I'm going to also do research ahead of time.
You're good at research, but you're also a sharp guy, and I think that serves you well. All right, last one I got. This is a simple one. I know you're big about relationships, so if folks out there want to get a hold of you, Jake, what's the easiest way?
The easiest that I'll actually get notifications for is just on Instagram.
Okay.
I get a lot of Facebook messages. And I get really behind on Facebook.
We're going to put your Instagram handle in our in the comments down here, so it's
Okay.
easy. Click on it and get right there.
Cool.
What kind of things should people call you with?
Man, if you got, I'll look at about any deal, obviously. So anything that's a lead, probably same as you.
Is your stuff you liking to stay in Tulsa right now from these kind of leads?
If it's single family, anything construction related, yes. But I've been looking at deals about anywhere right now, and I've been kind of trying to learn, but maybe that's not worth it. I don't know.
Yeah.
So
a lot of ways to skin that cat.
yeah, anything leads related, or if like right now, I think we're gonna start raising money just for the fix and flip side of it, just because I've had guys reach out. This is in the last 60 days, but we've never raised. So like, I don't know if I can say that on a podcast thing, but compliance, I don't know. But we're gonna start doing that, and then just keeping our money essentially in reserves and rotating with someone else's. So
that'll allow you to grow a lot quicker.
Yeah.
Well, my dude, thanks for coming. I appreciate it. I've learned something from you, and this has been a good time. So thanks for coming.
Thanks, man. Have me out.
My commitment to you is to deliver the most interesting, messy, and profitable real estate deals on earth. And in exchange for that, I only ask that you subscribe to this podcast and share it with a friend who can benefit.